Paranormal investigator Zach Bagans opened his very own haunted museum in Las Vegas in 2017, which is home to a number of items that supposedly have. One thing that's housed there is the Dybbuk box, a wine box that is said to be so haunted by a Dybbuk, which is an evil spirit who is supposedly able to possess people. In fact, the box served as the inspiration for the 2012 movie The Possession. Now, the item came to fame when it was listed on eBay along with a creepy story about its past and was eventually donated to Bagans for his museum. Side note, kind of, well, you know Post Malone? Well, apparently he has actually been cursed by the Dybbuk box. He was at the museum when Bagans decided to take the plexiglass cover from around the box and actually touch it for the very first time. While he was touching the box itself, Post Malone actually grabbed his shoulder, enough apparently to transfer the curse. Now, in the months that followed, Post Malone experienced one, his private plane was forced to make an emergency landing after its tires blew off. Two, three armed robbers targeted a home in San Fernando Valley that they actually believed to be his. And three, his Rolls Royce was involved in a serious car accident. Yep, that sounds like curse to me, but time will tell if more things happen. The cursed chair, also known as Thomas Busby's stoop chair. This simple wooden chair is said to have been cursed by accused slayer Thomas Busby. Now, Busby was executed by hanging in 1702 in North Yorkshire. But before he passed, he allegedly performed something sinister on the chair in question. Over the years, several passings have been attributed to people sitting in the chair and later passing in suspicious circumstances. It now remains at the Thirsk Museum, where it is displayed hanging from the ceiling, making it impossible for anyone, even museum staff, to actually sit on it. Next up, Great Bed of Ware. In around 1590, carpenter Jonas Fosbrook crafted a giant bed so large that it is said to be able to sleep 4 couples. The extra large bed now lives at the Victoria and Albert Museum, but over the years rumors have swirled that the bed is cursed by Fosbrook's ghost. Now, he allegedly made the bed to be slept on by nobility, but eventually commoners began sleeping on it as it traveled from inn to inn. His spirit is said to attack any low-bred person who dares to rest their head on it. The Great Bed of Ware has been mentioned in several literary works, including Shakespeare's Twelfth Night and Byron's Don Juan. Now, the Great Bed of Ware now sits on display at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. No one can sleep on it. The Unlucky Mummy. This is an ancient Egyptian artifact housed in the British Museum with a reputation for bringing misfortune and tragedy to those who come in contact with it. The mummy board, which is actually a wooden coffin lid adorned with vibrant paintings, was acquired in 1889. It was purchased by Thomas Douglas Murray, a wealthy collector in Cairo. Now, Murray's experience with the mummy were marred by a series of unfortunate events, including a firearm explosion that injured his arm and the unaliving of some of his close friends. Eventually, the museum sold the unlucky mummy to a private collector who tried to have the mummy exorcised. When he could not arrange it, he sold it for a handsome price to an American archaeologist who dismissed the happenings as quirks of circumstance. Now, the new owner arranged for the unlucky mummy to be shipped to New York aboard a sparkling new White Star liner about to make its maiden voyage. On the night of April 14th, amid scenes of unprecedented horror, the Princess of Amun-Ra accompanied 1,500 passengers to their demise at the bottom of the Atlantic. Of course, the name of the ship was, dun dun dun, Titanic. So as you can imagine, many people believe the unlucky mummy is the reason the Titanic sank. Photographers who have captured the mummy have reported strange occurrences such as, equipment malfunctions, unexplained noises. Sir Ernest Wallace Budge, the museum's keeper, attempted to mitigate the curse by moving the mummy to a different location, but the misfortunes just continued. The Catskills Crone, the traveling museum of the paranormal and occult, is home to many objects with dubious pasts, and one of the creepiest is known as the Catskills Crone. As the legend goes, a pair of hikers were trekking in the Catskills Mountains when they came across this statue, which has nails hammered into its eyes and a rope around its neck. They took it from the cave where it was found, bad idea by the way, and once they brought it home, they saw an apparition of a woman accompanied by a smell of pond water. The Annabelle doll. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren started their museum for items just like this one. Annabelle the doll served as inspiration for the Conjuring movies because of the creepy tale that accompanied her. Now, in 1970, the doll was given as a gift to a student nurse named Donna, who noticed eerie things about it, like the doll leaving notes on paper that said "help me," moving positions at the kitchen table, and even attacking one of their friends. They eventually had a medium step in to give an opinion. companion. Now, the expert deemed it to be possessed, a viewpoint that the Warrens agreed upon when the doll eventually found its way to them. The expert had said that the doll was possessed by a little girl that had passed there named Annabelle Higgins, but the Warrens said no, that's not the case. The doll was actually possessed by a demon, summoned from the devil himself, and was there to use the doll as a vessel to manipulate and harm people. The doll has been locked up in their museum, thank goodness, but those who have experienced Annabelle, have been known to have experienced very traumatic events in their life, like car accidents, NDEs, and the doll is labeled as extremely dangerous. Well, good, keep that baby locked up then. The dark mirror, another object housed at the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, is referred to as the dark mirror. The person who owned this mirror before giving it to the museum bought it at a psychic fair and said they saw terrible visions when looking at it. It is alleged that the mirror actually reflects the biggest fears of the viewer. People have reported seeing themselves age and disappear when they look into it. Some visitors to the museum have even reported seeing their own perished bodies when they gaze into the mirror. Yikes. The Koh-i-Noor diamond. Now, one of the world's largest cut diamonds is said to hold a centuries-long curse. The Koh-i-Noor diamond clocks in at over 105 carats and is part of the British crown jewels. The diamond once belonged to Ranjit Singh, who founded the Sikh Empire, but it was eventually taken by the East India Company and claimed by the British. The conflict that surrounded the possession of the jewel is said to put a curse on any man who wears it. Luckily, the last few wearers have been women, and they all seem to have remained uncursed. Robert the doll. This doll, apparently even scarier than Annabelle, is a haunted doll that is currently on display at the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. According to legend, Robert was once owned by a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, who received the doll as a gift from a Bahamian servant in the early 1900s. Now, the servant was allegedly skilled in voodoo, and it is believed that she placed a curse on the doll. Robert was terrified of this doll, claiming that it would come to life and cause, havoc. He named the doll after himself, which is a weird flex if you're super scared of it, but okay. And he treated it as his companion. Again, weird considering how scared you are of it. Anyway, the doll's behavior became increasingly malevolent. Visitors at the museum, when they go to see Robert, have claimed that they actually see his eyes move or his expression change and just have a feeling of an intense chill go over them. These cursed ancient relics are so feared that even historians are scared to touch them. The unlucky mummy. Now, the moment this object arrived in London, things started going wrong. People didn't just feel uneasy around it, they actually got hurt, careers collapsed, lives unraveled, and even today museum staff avoid standing too close to it for too long. This artifact is known as the unlucky mummy, and despite the name, it isn't actually a wrapped mummy at all. It's a painted wooden coffin board from ancient Egypt, believed to be over 3,000 years old. It once lay directly over the body of a high-status Egyptian woman, designed to protect her spirit for eternity. Instead, many believe it brought something else with it. Shortly after the artifact was acquired in the late 1800s, a series of strange incidents followed. One man who helped transport it reportedly lost an arm in an accident shortly afterwards. Another suffered financial ruin, and a photographer who attempted to capture images of the board later claimed the woman's face appeared to change expression in the photos, shifting from calm to enraged. Museum workers began whispering that being near it caused sudden illness, fainting, or overwhelming dread. Some refused to touch it altogether. Others insisted the atmosphere around it felt very heavy, as if the air itself was pressing inwards. What makes this relic especially disturbing is that ancient Egyptians believed coffin boards weren't decorative, they were magical. They were meant to act as a replacement body, a spiritual anchor for the soul, and if disturbed, the soul could become hostile, confused, or vengeful. Over time, the artifact gained such a reputation that rumors emerged claiming it had been connected to disasters far beyond the museum, including shipwrecks and unexplained demises of people who merely studied it too closely. While historians officially deny those connections, the artifact is still displayed behind glass, rarely moved, rarely discussed in depth. Even skeptics admit something about its history is just very uncomfortable. Otzi the Iceman's copper axe. Now, he was found frozen in time, and ever since, misfortune has followed him. In 1991, hikers in the Alps stumbled across a body emerging from melting ice. At first, authorities thought it was a modern passing. They were wrong by over 5,000 years. The man became known as Otzi or Otzi the Iceman, and with him were perfectly preserved tools, including a copper axe so advanced it rewrote what we knew about ancient technology. But soon after Otzi was was removed from the mountain, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Several people directly involved in the discovery, transport, and examination of the body and its belongings passed away under sudden or very violent circumstances. A forensic expert involved in the autopsy was unalived in a car crash. A mountain guide who helped recover the body later passed away in an avalanche. A journalist who documented the find passed from a brain tumor shortly after completing his work. None of these passings alone would seem strange, but together they formed a very chilling narrative. The copper axe in particular became the focus of unease. In ancient cultures, weapons weren't just tools, they were extensions of the soul. Otzi's axe showed signs of repair and care, suggesting it was deeply personal. Some researchers believe it was buried with him, intentionally to protect him in the afterlife. Others believe removing it broke a boundary. So to this day, Otzi's remains and belongings are kept in highly controlled environments, monitored constantly. While scientists, emphasize preservation, some privately admit they would never want to be the last person alone in the room with him because whatever happened on that mountain might not be finished. King Tut's treasures. Now they opened the tomb, the demise followed. When King Tut's burial chamber was uncovered in 1922, it was one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in history, a nearly untouched royal tomb sealed for over 3,000 years, but almost immediately whispers of a curse began circulating. The first to pass away was Lord Carnarvon, the financial backer of the excavation. He passed suddenly from blood poisoning after a mosquito bite, an ordinary injury that became fatal. Newspapers around the world erupted with speculation. Then more passings followed. People connected to the tomb suffered illnesses, accidents, and sudden declines. Some passed on young, others experienced long, unexplained sickness. Ancient Egyptian tombs often contain warnings, not always literal curses, but symbolic threats promising divine punishment to those who disturb sacred ground. And Tut's burial was, filled with ritual objects meant to protect the king. The treasures themselves, though golden shrines, weapons, jewelry, weren't just symbols of wealth, they were religious instruments, kind of with protective magic over them. Even today, curators handle these items with extreme care. Some claim working long hours around them causes headaches, nausea, or even vivid nightmares. Now, rational explanations do exist, of course, but the legend refuses to pass on, because if there was ever a tomb meant to remain sealed forever, this might have been it. The Terracotta Army's forbidden weapons. Now, thousands of soldiers, all facing forward, all armed, all waiting. The Terracotta Army was built to guard China's first emperor in the afterlife, and according to legend, they're still doing their job. When farmers discovered the army buried beneath the earth, it shocked the world. But what received far less attention were the stories that followed. Workers involved in early excavations reported disturbing dreams. Some claimed they felt watched underground, others refused to continue after tools broke inexplicably or sudden injuries just occurred. And the emperor's burial complex was designed with lethal traps, poisonous substances, and symbolic guardians. Ancient texts warned that disturbing it would invite, catastrophe. Even today, large portions of the emperor's tomb remain unopened, not just because of preservation concerns, but because scientists fear what lies inside. Mercury levels detected underground are dangerously high, supporting ancient accounts of rivers of poison meant to unalive intruders. The weapons found amongst the army were astonishingly preserved, still very sharp, still very lethal. Some believe they were treated with techniques lost to history, and some believe they were never meant to be removed. The Mount Ebal Curse tablet. It's small, folded, and possibly very dangerous. Discovered in the hills of the West Bank, this ancient lead tablet is believed by some to contain one of the earliest known written curses in human history. The tablet was folded shut, deliberately sealed, not displayed, not meant to be read. When researchers announced its existence, controversy exploded. Scholars argued fiercely over its authenticity, its meaning, and whether it should even be opened further at all. Ancient curse tablets were not symbolic. They were legal, spiritual weapons designed to bind, condemn, or invoke divine judgment. Some researchers involved in the study reported intense backlash, professional attacks, and career-ending disputes almost immediately. Now, whether coincidence or consequence, the artifact becomes radioactive within academic circles. Few objects have caused such fear without ever being publicly displayed, because if it truly contains a curse, reading it may have been the first mistake. History teaches us many things, but sometimes it whispers a warning. Some relics survive not to be studied, but to remind us that they were never meant to be touched.
Number 5, my precious. The The Vine Ring, or Ring of Sylvanus, is a gold ring dating probably from the 4th century AD, discovered in a plowed field near Silchester in Hampshire, England in 1785. This happens to be the site of many archaeological discoveries, but nothing else seems to be super newsworthy. It is unknown how the ring came to be located at the Vine, but it is presumed that the farmer who found the ring sold it to the family, who were known to have an interest in history and antiquities. In 1888, the owner of the property, Shalloner Shute, wrote about the ring in the history of the house. The ring of Sylvanus or Sylvanus, let me know in the comments which pronunciation is right, is larger than most rings, being 1 inch in diameter and weighing 12 grams. The band of the ring has 10 facets and is set with a square bezel engraved with an image of the goddess Venus. To one side are the letters VE and to the other side NVS in mirror writing. The band is inscribed with the words Siniciane vivas in de. I tried. In 1929, the archaeologist Sir Mortimer Wheeler was excavating the Lydney site and made a connection between the ring, bearing the name of Sinicianus, and the cursed stone bearing the same name. Wheeler called upon J.R.R. Tolkien, as professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford University, to investigate the etymology of the name Nodens referred to in the curse. So remember Lord of the Rings? Well, this is the ring that inspired it. Sylvanus loses his gold ring at Lydney as Gollum lost his under the Misty Mountains. Sylvanus believes his ring has been stolen by someone whose name he knows, Sinicianus, just as Gollum thinks his ring has been stolen by Bilbo Baggins. Sylvanus curses by name the person he suspects, and similarly, when Gollum works out that Bilbo has found and kept his ring, he cries out in rage, "Thief, thief, thief! Baggins, we hates it, we hates it, we hates it forever." That's also just me when I wake up in the morning. Both Gollum and Sylvanus know the identity of the persons they regard as thieves who have stolen their gold rings, and both declare these names with maledictions. Roman tablets were found to contain references to the artifact, informing the god Nodens that the ring had been stolen. In the tablet, the former owner of the ring proclaims that whoever has taken the ring shall find themselves in bad health until it's given back to its owner. As it was written, for the god Nodens, Sylvanus has lost a ring and has donated 1/2 of its worth to Nodens. Among those named Sinicianus, permit no good health until it is returned to the temple of Nodens. So Nodens is a cognate of the Old Irish Nuada Argitlem, first king of Tuatha de Danann, who was disqualified from ruling Ireland because he lost his hand in battle. Nodens has also been associated with the Fisher King of Arthurian legends, the Norse god Njord of the Vanir, who is the god of wine, fishing, sailing, and fertile land along the seacoast, and the Roman god Mars. By all accounts, Nodens could be a rascally deity and well inclined to help with a curse, you know? I thought, maybe put that thing back where it came from? Or so help me? Currently it's in a museum somewhere, but thankfully not on display, and the exact location is also unknown, which that's a win in my book. Number 4, a copy of Crying Boy. So when Bob Smith was a young person in the 70s, he became fascinated by a painting in his grandmother's house. It was a cheap print of a well-known piece and was hung on the living room wall. The photo depicted a boy who was similar age to Bob and for some reason looked sad and downcast, with tears brimming from his troubled eyes. A few years after the painting went up on the wall, there was a devastating kitchen fire in the house, and while the kitchen was destroyed, the rest of the house was undamaged. Now the painting was eventually sold in a garage sale to Ed Warren. You know that name. I know you know that name. For years it puzzled Bob why his grandmother got rid of the painting until he read a series of articles about a curse painting, which was, yep, The Crying Boy. So The Crying Boy was one in a series of paintings by artist Giovanni Bregolin that was completed in the 1950s. In total, Giovanni painted over 60 paintings, and up until the early 80s, prints and reprints of his images continued to be mass-produced. In 1985, the most popular tabloid newspaper in the United Kingdom printed a story that caused panic and ended the popularity of his work. The Sun published an article entitled Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy, describing the terrible experience of May and Ron Hall after their home was destroyed by fire. The cause of the fire, much like Bob's grandma's, was a greasy pan that overheated and burst into flames and spread rapidly and destroyed everything on the ground floor. Only one item remained intact, prints of the Crying Boy on their living room wall. Distraught at their loss, the devastated couple made the bizarre claim that the painting was cursed, and it, not the pan, was the cause of the fire. Now this tale probably would have disappeared into the archives of strange and mysterious stories, except for one teeny tiny thing. A firefighter claimed that he had attended at least 15 house fires where everything was destroyed except for prints of the Crying Boy, which would remain completely intact. Before long, the story gathered momentum, and a rash of fires all over the world were blamed on the cursed boy. When the Sun reported that even rational firefighters refused to have a copy of the Crying Boy in their homes, the reputation of the painting was damned forever. In all these cases, and many more that were reported, the paintings of the Crying Boy remained unharmed. Now, most copies were burned in a massive bonfire held by the Sun newspaper and led by professional firefighters, but to this day, a few copies still exist, and I'm just gonna steer clear of those places. Now, I haven't heard of any of them being officially on display, which, whew, great relief. Number 3. A vase you'll want to break. So for centuries, a common wedding gift given to brides of royalty and wealth were intricate and expensive vases. Back in the 12th century, the Duchess Eleanor of Aquitaine gifted her husband-to-be, King Louis VIII, a raw crystal vase. So, it wasn't unusual when a woman in the 15th century received a vase as a wedding gift, but it was just kind of silver and plain looking. There was no intricate markings, no lavish decorations, and it didn't really appear to be expensive, but this particular vase contained a curse that would continue to take lives for the next 5 centuries. Not much is known about the woman who originally received the vase way back when, other than her wedding took place in a northern village close to Napoli, Italy. The stories say she didn't know who gifted her the 4-pound silver vase, but took it to her room for safekeeping, just to be on the safe side. And when the wedding was about to start, she was nowhere to be found. Her husband-to-be searched for her and found her in her room, lying on the ground, clutching the vase with a fierce grip before passing away just moments later. After her funeral, the Bassano vase was given to one of her family members for safekeeping, but within days they were also dead. At the time, no one thought the vase was the cause, and it was given to another family member to hold. Anyone want to guess what happened next? Yeah, you guessed it. Days later, they were dead as well. The family finally put 2 and 2 together and reached out to a priest for guidance, under the belief that whoever gifted the bride the vase put a curse on it or had it made with cursed materials, and were instructed to bury it on sacred grounds. Many believe it was buried near the same church where the priest resided, but it's not exactly known where it was buried, as the vase steered clear of history books for around 500 years. In 1988, an unnamed man happened to dig up the vase in Italy, and within it found a note reading, "Beware, this vase brings death." And go figure, he ignored the note, tossing it away, and brought the vase to an auction house. A classic case of those who ignore history being forced to repeat it. It was sold to a local pharmacist for the equivalent of $2,270 USD in today's money. 3 months later, the pharmacist had passed, and his family sold the vase to a 37-year-old doctor, who also passed away soon after. Anyone else getting a lovely case of deja vu? At that point, the vase started gaining a reputation, and no one was willing to purchase it, minus a single archaeologist, who 3 months later died from an unknown and mysterious infection. Distraught and afraid, the family of the archaeologist tossed the vase out of a window, where a cop found it and tried passing it off to multiple museums, none of which wanted to publicly accept it, but legend says that one did and buried it amongst their archives for safety. Number 2. James Dean's car. Actor James Dean loved his 1955 Porsche Spyder, having had it extensively customized, and he affectionately called it his little bastard. Apparently the car was so transparently evil that Sir Alec Guinness, when meeting Dean for lunch one day, claimed, "If you get in that car, you will be found dead in it by this time next week." Now Dean laughed it off and set about preparing the car for the sports car races with his mechanic Rolf Witherich. Enlisting stuntman Bill Hickman to help out, the original plan was to tow Little B to the races, but Rolf felt it would be better for Dean to get used to the Spyder and run the engine in. On that fateful Friday, Rolf sat next to Dean, while Hickman followed with his truck and trailer. Police pulled over the convoy and issued a pair of speeding tickets just outside Bakersfield, but that didn't slow Dean down one bit. Dean was barreling down Route 466 at an estimated 85 miles per hour when a young Cal Poly student named Donald Turnipspeed, driving a Ford Tudor, decided to make a sudden turn onto Route 41. The impact sent the Ford almost 40 feet down the road and ejected Rolf from the Porsche. Dean was pronounced dead on arrival at the Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital at 6:20 p.m. But hey, the curse didn't stop there. When mechanics tried to repair the wrecked car, it fell on one of them, crushing both of his legs. Dr. William Eskridge bought the Porsche from a salvage yard in Burbank and proceeded to strip it for parts. He installed the Porsche's engine into his Lotus race car, then loaned the transmission and suspension parts to a fellow doctor and racer, Troy McHenry. Dr. William crashed the Lotus at the 1956 Pomona sports car races, surviving, but McHenry wasn't as lucky. He hit a tree and was killed in the same race, and so the curse of Little B gained strength. 2 thieves who tried to take pieces of the car were both injured, and the Porsche itself carried on. Shortly after the crash, publicity monger and self-proclaimed King of Customs with a K, George Barris bought the Spyder, or what was left of it, promising to rebuild it. When the mangled frame was found to be beyond recovery, he chose to capitalize on the car's notoriety. The Porsche was loaned to the Los Angeles chapter of the National Safety Council, and from 1957 to 59, it went on a gruesome tour of car shows, movie theaters, and bowling alleys. In March of 1959, while in storage in Fresno, the car mysteriously caught fire. It suffered remarkably little damage, just 2 melted tires and some singed paint, and fortunately the fire didn't spread to the other vehicles in storage. Meanwhile, Barris had sold a pair of tires from the car, and both repeatedly blew at the same time, causing the new owner to, veer off the road. Little B even managed to crush and kill a truck driver who was transporting it. The car has since disappeared into a museum archive, which is probably for the best. I'm nervous just around regular cars, but the thought of this cursed monstrosity is making me extra jittery. Or, that might be from the second energy drink I had a moment ago. Number 1. Don't open the box. In Jewish folklore, a dibuk is an evil spirit. Supposedly, a Holocaust survivor accidentally summoned this demon while using a homemade Ouija board, but managed to trap it inside the wine cabinet. Okay, I'm just gonna back up and unpack that for a moment. Somebody summoned something evil with a Ouija board, sealed it in something else, and people keep trying to awaken it? Let sleeping demons lie, for crying out loud. Kevin Mannis bought the box at an estate sale in 2001 and immediately started having nightmares about an evil hag. Ditto for the friends who were staying with him. Now, he gave the box to his mother, who suffered a stroke on the same day. The box's later owners have also claimed that the spirit within has appeared in their nightmares as well. The last owner was Jason Haxton, director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine, who not only had nightmares, but developed a strange skin disease and began coughing up red fluid. Now, at that point, he contacted his local rabbis, sealed the demon back in the box, and then hid it from the world with help from a museum archivist friend. I don't think I ever want a behind-the-scenes tour of a museum. The third secret of Fatima is believed to be a secret document hidden within the archives. In 1917, 3 folks from Portugal received prophecies, one of which was witnessed by thousands of people. But this supposed suppression of the third secret fueled rumors that its contents were regarding a nuclear world-ending event, natural disaster, or worse. The release of the contents of this secret in 2000 didn't do much to quell speculation. So to be specific, the first prediction was a vision of hell. The second was a prediction of the end of the First World Mass Extinction event, and a prediction of the beginning of a worse war, as well as a call to consecrate an entire country that's still doing bad things to this day to the Immaculate Heart of Mary as a way to bring peace. And finally, the third big elusive secret, a vision of the Pope, along with other bishops, priests, religious and lay people, being killed by soldiers. The Church has taken this not as specific prophecy, which has or will come true, but in the words of Pope Benedict XVI, a vision, speaking of dangers and how we might be saved from them. He said it is meant to mobilize the forces of change in the right direction. But still, who knows what other curses those documents are holding? Hidden within the Vatican Palace, a set of opulent apartments are adorned with stunning architecture and are said to have hidden passageways used by the infamous Borgia family. Believed to be the first ever criminal family, they were Italian-Spanish nobles who rose to prominence during the Italian Renaissance. During the reign of Pope Alexander VI, formerly known as Rodrigo Borgia, they were suspected of many crimes, including but not limited to adultery, interfamilial relations, theft, bribery, killings, mostly from the liberal use of arsenic, and worse. Because of their grasping for power, they made enemies of the Medici family and the Dominican friar Girolamo Savonarola, among many others. This family stands out in history as being infamously steeped in sin and immorality. Going back to that mention of Alexander VI's reign, it is reported that they hosted a lot of naughty parties in the Vatican Palace, the banquet of chestnuts being considered one of the most disreputable balls of this kind, with reports of 50 courtesans in attendance for the entertainment of the banquet guests. It is alleged that not only was the Pope present, but also 2 of his offspring, Lucrezia and Cesar, were also there. If you were wondering, the Pope had descendants? While a cardinal, Pope Alexander maintained a long-term illicit relationship with Vanosa de Catene, with whom he had 4 descendants, Giovanni, Cesar, Lucrezia, and Giuffre. Rodrigo also had offspring with other women, including a daughter with his mistress, Giulia Farnese. Cesar went on to kill Giovanni in hopes of gaining more power within the family, and was successful on that front. Lucrezia was a notorious poisoner. She became famous for her skill at political intrigue and the mysterious deaths and disappearances of her husband. I wouldn't want to mess with whatever evil spirits are still lingering around those old apartments and passageways, since there's probably a reason they aren't used anymore. The most cursed ledger of all time that calls the Vatican archives its home would have to be the record of exorcisms conducted by the Catholic Church. A famous man once said, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist." And in modern-day Vatican City, the devil is considered alive and well. The late Pope John Paul II personally performed 3 exorcisms during his reign, and Pope Benedict XVI expanded the ranks of the Catholic-sponsored exorcists throughout the world. In fact, Father Gabriel Amorth, the Church's chief exorcist, claims to have expelled more than 300 demons a year from the confines of his Vatican office, and there's about 350 exorcists operating on behalf of the Catholic Church in Italy alone. Father Gabriel also teaches bishops how to tell the difference between satanic possession and psychiatric illness, noting that those who suffer from the former seem to be particularly repulsed by the sight of holy water and the cross. So in Catholicism, exorcisms are performed in the name of Jesus Christ, and there's a distinction between major and minor ones. Minor exorcisms are included in some blessings in which priests call sacraments, such as blessed salt. The Catholic rite for formal exorcism, which is the major one, one is given in Section 11 of the Ritual Romana. The ritual lists guidelines for conducting this, and for determining when a formal one is required. In Catholic practice, the exorcist also has to be an ordained priest, if that wasn't obvious. They recite prayers according to the rubrics of the rite, and make use of religious materials such as icons, sacramentals, and holy relics. The exorcist invokes God, specifically the name of Jesus Christ, as well as saints of the Church Triumphant and the Archangel Michael to intervene as needed. According to Catholic understanding, several weekly exorcisms over many years are sometimes required to expel a deeply entrenched demon. The Holy Rosary has a very important power, and also holy water, really important here. Going back to Father Amorth, he states that in the year 2000, Pope John Paul II attempted to exorcise a woman, but failed. Father Amorth later witnessed the possessed woman crawling up walls like a spider. Absolutely terrifying. A filed lawsuit claims that during the evil German dictator's reign, the Vatican Bank received at least 200 million Swiss francs from his puppet Utasha regime, money that his followers allegedly looted from groups of people they set out to eliminate. The class action lawsuit, headed up by attorney Keelan Friesen at Minneapolis law firm Zimmerman Reed, involved 2,000 plaintiffs, seeking an accounting of the funds as well as restitution that could go up to like 200 million. The claim also names as yet unidentified Swiss, Austrian, Argentine, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and German banking institutions, where according to the lawyer, some of this plunder might have been routed to help war criminals escape to Argentina. The suit relies on once classified documents from various countries that have been made public over the last couple of years. Well, the last many years, as well as a 1998 US government report that was issued. Some of the report's most damning evidence appears in a 1946 intelligence memo from a US Treasury agent named Emerson Bigelow, who states that the Swiss francs were held in the Vatican for safekeeping. The Vatican has consistently denied allegations of receiving Yahtzee gold, and said its internal review showed no trace of such funds, because you're going to trust the internal review from a bank that actually destroyed their records for 70 years before going public on occasion. One of the reasons the Vatican has been criticized is because it refuses to open its archives. A key figure in helping folks keep this money hidden was Krunoslav Draganovic, a Croatian priest who was the head of the College of San Girolamo in Rome. So men in Croatia who wanted to become priests lived at San Girolamo while studying for ordination, and after the big mass extinction event, the college served as a safe house for the Utashi underground. So it's alleged that Draganovic aided Utashi military and civilian leaders who had been in power in Croatia and committed crimes. Krunoslav's assistance consisted in obtaining false documents and safe passage out of Italy. Experts write that there are allegations that Krunoslav used his Vatican bank connections to launder the gold stolen by the Utashi, and that he was paid for his cooperation. By the way, Krunoslav admitted that in 1945 he had personally moved 40 kilos of Utashi gold to Rome, concealed in packing cases. A request made under the Freedom of Information Act resulted in the 1997 release of Bigelow's report. Criminal conduct described in the report led to the institution of a 1999 lawsuit against the Vatican Bank, filed by survivors and descendants of the Utashi. But the lawsuit was dismissed in 2009 under terms of the Sovereign Immunities Act. Although the legal case no longer stands, there's a lot of moral questions around all of this. Ever since allegations concerning the Vatican Bank and the Croatian plunder became public, there's been a lot of requests to the Vatican to allow access to the archival documents, and nothing yet. If there is incriminating information, it should be allowed to come out. Whatever data survived the mid-1940s would be found here, and according to experts following tradition, documents pertaining to that time period could have been made public on March 12th of 2014, which was 75 years after this Pope was in power, but nothing's happened yet. At a 1997 conference on looted Yahtzee gold in London, the Vatican was the only one out of 42 countries that rebuffed all requests for archival access. At a 1998 restitution summit in Washington, it ignored an emotional plea made by US Secretary of State Madeleine Albright and stood aside as 44 countries approved an ambitious plan to return icky looted art and property, settle unpaid life insurance claims, and reaffirm the call for open access to that time-era archive. There was some enthusiasm over a 1999 Vatican announcement to allow Jewish historians into archives, but it was short-lived. Access was limited to 5,000 documents that had been hand-picked. All that cursed gold, still waiting to see the light of day. Finally, Queen Mary, a rallying force for Catholic cause in England, wrote a letter in French to Pope Sixtus V from Fotheringay Castle in Northamptonshire in November of 1586. She professed her allegiance to the Catholic Church of Rome and was going against the falsehoods perpetrated by her enemies in England. Now, this letter was written a few weeks before losing her head for her alleged involvement in the plot to take out Queen Elizabeth I. She claimed that the tribunal that condemned her to death was illegitimate, but her claims couldn't save her life or her head. Have you ever visited somewhere where you were sure a painting was following you with its eyes? How about a photo that just gave off like bad vibes? So one such item, a seemingly innocent photograph of a distinguished Victorian gentleman named Martin, emerged from the shadows of a dusty attic, akin to a forgotten relic from a long time past. Initially, it graced the owner's display, an intriguing conversation starter lifted from the sepia-toned pages of a forgotten family album. See, my apartment conversation starter is the tapestry of the popular Barbie movie universe character, Bibble, that takes up an entire wall of my living room. But hey, to each their own. Alright, back to the important stuff today. The passage of time is about to unravel an unsettling narrative woven around this seemingly innocent little picture. The anomaly wasn't visual, but more something you could smell, like an unsettling scent that clung to the photograph like an ethereal residue. The aroma, a mysterious blend of scents by the way, wafted from the each photograph, a scent symphony that defied the logic of temporal confinement. We've got roses dancing with the fragrance of burning embers, and a sharp essence of wood mingling with the air. The irregularity of these apparitions painted an eerie aura around the photograph, a scent-based enigma that was like, yo, what the heck? As the unsettling fragrances ebbed and flowed, a decision was made to reach out to the spectral presence suspected to be intertwined with the photograph's history. So what did they do? They grabbed a Ouija board. Yeah, the age-old conduit to the supernatural. It became the intermediary between the living and the spirit that was lingering between the photograph and the photograph's frame. The encounter was shockingly devoid of hostility. I say shockingly because hey, if there's one thing I will constantly preach against, it's the use of a Ouija board in any sense. It's like a telephone where you don't know who or what is going to answer and you can't trust anything. And what do you know? The whole household aura, it went from being great to being not so great. The paranormal curtain lifted, revealing a surge in unexplained phenomena that whispered of a restless energy tethered to said photograph. The decision was made. This photograph, now a vessel for the unknown, found itself exiled from the confines of the home, making its way into the hands of a collector. Where did the damn thing wind up? That I can't tell you, but I don't particularly want to come across it anytime soon. So if you bought a weird sepia picture from eBay, burn it, stick it in a trunk, I don't care, bury it for all I know. Well, we might as well stick with the demented artwork theme we've got going so far and move on to what is known as the haunted eBay painting, or the Hands Resistum. Based on a real-life photograph of the artist from around the time he was years old, this painting, a spectral dance of a young boy, a doll, and disembodied hands, traces its origins to an abandoned brewery, where a California couple stumbled upon its eerie presence. Soon after introducing the painting into the sanctum of their home, the couple, besieged by an unfolding narrative of the uncanny, decided to part ways with their newfound possession. So where did they go? Good old eBay. So they presented their artifact to the world, accompanied by a cautionary note that echoed with an ominous whisper: this painting may or may not possess supernatural powers that could impact or change your life. Good marketing or a genuine worry? Now let's see. The essence of their warning found roots in alleged nocturnal skirmishes between the painted boy and girl, an unsettling manifestation that their daughter ultimately revealed. As if extracted from the surreal realms of a ghost story, the advertisement carried whispers of the boy stepping beyond the confines of the canvas, an occurrence that served as the catalyst for their decision to relinquish their spectral acquisition. The curious drama surrounding this haunted masterpiece reached its crescendo when it found a new custodian in none other than Kim Smith, a gallery owner hailing from Michigan. The gavel of the digital auction pronounced a sum of $1,025, sealing the fate of the Hands Resistum. But the enigma surrounding this painting refused to be contained within the pixels of online transactions. In a revelation that either deepened the mystique or surprised nobody, depending on how you look at things, Kim Smith disclosed that her inbox bore witness to a procession of emails, testimonials from individuals claiming visceral reactions just by looking at a photograph of the painting. Reports of repulsion and physical illness became the postscript to the tale of the haunted eBay painting. This ordinary artifact turned conduit to the spectral, illustrating that even in the realm of e-commerce, the line between the tangible and the ethereal can kind of blur, and not in a good way. Now, if you feel ill after my talking about this painting today, please let us know in the comments so we can do a 10-part experiment on everybody's psyche. I'm kidding. Don't you trust me? Here's something you don't see every day, or at least I don't. How about we try on a haunted bra for size? Not actually, you weirdos, just in theory. It's one of the weirdest, frightening, but maybe one of the least sanitary items posted on eBay on today's list. Alright, picture this folks. A one-time used bra, white and kinda ratty, and designed for a woman with a 32A bust. But it's also packing some major spirit power, or so claims Tanya Rose, the woman selling it. But this isn't a second-hand bra, it is a third-hand bra, because the listing claims it belonged to a deceased woman, one who lived a life with a lot of amorous adventures and partying before she met an untimely end. So why would you want it? Because according to the seller, the spirit of this crazy lady never quite left. Her spirit is still hanging around in her bra, and anyone who wears it will inherit her success in the romantic world. Get ready for a big increase in the number of admirers and gifts. But it may not have wound up with a woman, because it supposedly has another ability. So if you're gonna put a lit white candle near the bra, the spirit of the woman will appear. But if you're gonna place a red candle, the owner's gonna gonna come back and greet you with a very sensual encounter with the spirit world. And while this is terrifying at all, it kind of reminds me of another haunted bra from pop culture. Anybody remember George the Bra from iCarly? Does anybody remember George the Bra from iCarly? So he was this large pink bra who told ghost stories to anybody watching, and he made his first appearance on an iCarly sketch in the episode I Give Away a Car, and also appeared at the beginning of I Saved Your Life. Heck, at one time there was even a segment on the actual website, iCarly.com, that was dedicated to his stories. So I guess he's not the only haunted bra anymore. Okay folks, we're gonna move on to a different bust object. Sorry, it was an easy joke, and I've spent way too much time lately around folks who have mastered the groaning style of humor. The genesis of this haunting creation is intertwined with the tragic demise of its creator, William. Crafting sculptures from unhardened clay was his passion, a pursuit that met an untimely end on the day he was crushed to death in a work-related accident at the brickyard. The statue, a product of that fateful day, stood as a spectral relic, a tangible link between the artist's final moments and the unknown afterlife. A twist in the tale comes as a fellow laborer, bearing witness to the aftermath of the tragedy, laid eyes on the forlorn statue at the job site the following day. The decision to take it home marks the inception of a series of unsettling events. Initially dormant, the statue's dormant malevolence sprang to life when it was unearthed from its storage confines and proudly displayed in the den. Now the den, once a sanctuary, because we all love a good cozy space, transformed into an oppressive space, laden with an unexplained heaviness that permeated the air. The mundane act of doors slamming of their own accord became an eerie symphony, with the culprit, upon investigation, revealing wide open portals into the unknown. Nearby decorations, juxtaposed with the malevolent sculpture, met their demise in spontaneous acts of shattering. The inanimate bust, anchored in the physical realm, defied the laws of, well, everything. It exhibited a will of its own, orchestrating a macabre ballet as it pivoted to face the wall without even the slightest human intervention. The surreal crescendo reached its peak when a dark shadow or mist, an elusive apparition, materialized in said den, heightening the spectral ambiance. Terrified by the unfolding supernatural saga, the owner was like, okay, let's get rid of this thing, I can't do it anymore. Desperation and fear impelled him to beseech a friend to orchestrate the artifact's exodus from his life, if you will. The friend, perhaps understanding the gravity of the situation, turned to eBay. I feel like Christian Borle when I say that. Thrusting the haunted statue into the labyrinthine corridors of online auctions, leaving its paranormal legacy for a new, unwitting custodian to unravel. And people wonder why young folks aren't buying random art to display in their homes anymore. Seriously. Alrighty everybody, we're gonna end today with some of my favorite haunted items in the whole wide world, haunted dolls. Since they're sadly a bit of a cliche, I figured it was best to save them until the end of our time, so I didn't risk anybody getting bored right off the bat, and so I wouldn't be tempted to turn today into a top 5 scary dolls for sale. Granted, I might still do that, to be determined. The doll that mostly caught my attention today was this beautiful Anne of Green Gables doll. With her copper braids, dark green dress, straw hat, and porcelain skin, she'd fit in really nicely amongst my personal collection. But this doll, located in Windsor, Ontario, came with a picture of her supposed spirit. The description says, "This is not a joke, she is very active." Now, I already own a couple of demon dolls, so maybe I don't want to mess with too many spirits. The seller claims that the doll was purchased at a garage sale 20 years ago and has moved positions on its own. And it can be yours for a mere $60 plus shipping, which is a steal if you ask me. I was performing at an oddities market recently, and the haunted dolls at that event were going for a premium. Mostly because in a crowd like that, it's pretty easy to find out if the item in question is a fake. Oh, you don't believe me? Okay, well let's see. We've got this event. It was run by a world-renowned mind reader who owns one of the most spirited dolls I've ever been in the presence of. If you've heard of Walt, yeah, his owner. Another one of the vendors was an extremely experienced tarot reader who can call BS in an instant. And hey, I was also there, and I can tell pretty quickly if a doll has a mind of its own or not after owning a couple of gals with, personalities if I'm being polite. I've mentioned a couple of times, but if you don't know anything about my cursed dolls, I do recommend pausing this video and watching the one I did on haunted dolls you've never heard about, where I did a big deep dive into my collection and my friend Mysterion's collection. So long story short, haunted dolls at events like that are the real thing. If Anne with an E wasn't creepy enough for you though, back in 2021, a doll from Sault Ste. Marie named Carini has apparently been heard saying her name out loud and even moves around sometimes. And moves around objects. The seller has added a disclaimer that you might not witness the paranormal activity described, so don't be disappointed if she behaves like the inanimate object that she is. And that's the thing with a lot of, demon dolls. It depends on who they're around and if they want to or not. And since I'm on a tangent anyways, there was another nightmare doll that caught my eye because she reminds me of my own Kissy Kissy Baby doll. Now this doll might look like any other, but according to the seller, it's pretty cursed. The seller, who specializes in selling paranormal items that people don't want anymore, says the doll's owner bought it at an antique shop and was told that it was cursed, but the seller used a lot of words that the gal didn't know, so she's like, you know what, it'll come home with me, whatever, I'll take care of it. So soon after, whenever she would open the doll that it came in or touch the doll, she would suffer from terrifying nightmares of shadow shopkeeper. This continued for several months until her son took it from her to sell it, and it sold for only $17.49, which, once again, steal of a deal.
Number 5. The Shadow Doll. Coming up on the number 5 spot today is part of the collection owned by the late Ed and Lorraine Warren, big top 5 scary fan favorites. One of the first items you'll see when entering the Warrens' Haunted Museum is this terrifying little shadow doll made of bird feathers and real human teeth. The Warrens' son-in-law and current proprietor of the now defunct museum, Tony Spera, offers a little bit of insight on the doll, saying it was originally acquired at an antique shop where it was being sold, with the owners of the shop being none the wiser of the doll's evil. That's completely on the antique shop owner though. You come into a possession of a doll made of bird feathers and human teeth, your first instinct should not be to stick a price tag on it. You should toss it into the ocean or burn it, something like that. Spera claims that the doll's curse works by taking a photograph of the doll, and then when it develops, you write the curse that you'd like to inflict on the back of the photo, and you send that to your victim. And the person who opens the envelope and sees the doll in the photograph will invite the curse into your home. Now, probably a lot of pictures of the shadow doll behind me, or pictures of the shadow doll being interspersed in this video right now. I just want to tell you, I don't have any curses in mind. I didn't write any curses down. I don't have a negative thought inside my head, buddy. I barely have thoughts inside my head as is. If I would curse you with anything, I would curse you to always find loose change, always get texts back from your crush, and I'd curse you to always make the right amount of pasta. I'd only curse you good things. Now, the real question I have to ask about this scary shadow doll is, do you think it's jealous that it's not the most famous haunted doll in the Warrens Museum? I know I would probably have a very hard time sitting next to Annabelle all day. Everyone's coming to gawk and take photos at my movie star sister. Ugh, hard life. Nobody's gonna make any movies about me. No wonder that doll is cursing people. And if you're looking for more stories about cursed dolls, I've got lots and lots and lots and lots of those. And I've got lots of other scary things too. Aliens, ghouls, goblins, conspiracies, just about anything you can think up. I've done a video or two on it. So hit subscribe. Please make sure you hit that little bell as well. That means you get every one of the videos we make. But do that at the end of this video if you wouldn't mind, because I got 4 more crazy cursed objects coming up for you right about now. Number 4, cursed ballista balls. Like, the last couple years had everybody acting pretty strange. I think it was unprecedented times. Maybe you binged all of Tiger King in a day. Maybe you got really into making sourdough. Maybe you returned a cursed artifact you stole when you were a teenager. We all went through some personal development. In 2020, a source that chooses to remain anonymous returned an ancient artifact that they'd stolen as a teenager to the Israeli government. A Bronze Age ballista ball fired during the Great Jewish Revolt by the Romans. The thief swiped them as a teenager when visiting with a group of friends and went on to live a fairly normal life, a successful career, found a partner, sired some children. Throughout his entire life, he felt as if there was a weight over him, as if he had some invisible presence of guilt weighing down on him forever. And he said no matter how long it had been, or how much his life had moved past this childhood act of delinquency, his heart could never move on from it, and he felt as if he'd been cursed to forever bear the guilt of it. During the events of the last few years, he said it stirred in him this apocalyptic feeling that made him want to return the ballista balls in the hopes of finally clearing his conscience. Do you think at any point during all that fun stuff during the quarantine and everything, do you think he was ever worried that he might have accidentally done it by moving those ballista balls and that's why he had to put them back? Through Facebook, he ended up getting put towards the right channels within the government to return it. But you know what's really bizarre about this bizarre story? This isn't even the first time this has happened, because in 2015 an almost identical story played out. In 2015, 2 ballista balls were returned to Israeli authorities alongside a note stating, "I took these in 1995 from a residential quarter at the foot of the summit. They have brought me nothing but trouble. Please do not steal antiquities." Well, I've got to say it's a nice change of pace to hear about people trying to undo a curse before anything got too heated. And you know what? I like these stories. It's a very easy to follow message for those of us listening at home. Don't steal antiquities. Unless you're Indiana Jones, that should be some pretty easy advice to follow in your life. Number 3, the Crying Boy painting. Some of my favorite cursed objects are a good haunted painting. Maybe it's because I had a huge fondness for Ghostbusters 2 as a little guy, and it's got a haunted painting as the main bad guy of that movie. Maybe it's just because I'm very enticed by the uncanny valley of a pair of eyes that you can look at but can never look at you back. We'll probably mention that in therapy next time. Anyway, case in point, take a look at this painting, the Crying Crying Boy. Looks like a fairly normal painting, wouldn't look too out of place in your dentist's office. It's not really my kind of art, but I'm sure a generation of grannies love to put this in the parlor. It's been the center of a series of strange coincidences that are just too darn odd to be true. It was painted by an Italian painter, one Giovanni Bragolin, and mass-produced as a print across the 50s, so everyone could enjoy this sad crying boy in the comfort of their own home until they would burn down. Because for some bizarre, possibly paranormal reason, firefighters around Essex, London would report that frequently, amidst smoldering ruins of a burned down house, repeatedly they would find the crying boy painting completely untouched by the flames, even when everything else had burned to ash. Now, this happens once, that's bizarre. 2, very strange. If this happens 3 times, you've got yourself an outright paranormal mystery on your hands. The British tabloid The Sun loved the story and was spreading stories of the cursed paintings like a house on fire. Too soon? The Sun printed out warnings of people who owned the painting and that they should get rid of it, lest they find themselves smelling smoke. The story was so popular and people were so invested in the curse of the crying boy that the Sun tried to take it upon themselves to rid London of the curse by, get this, holding a bonfire in which anyone who owned a print of the cursed painting could come, torch it, and hopefully exorcise whatever demons had got into the printing press. The bonfire was a raging success, with sackfuls of the prints being torched, seemingly ending the curse of the crying boy. After hearing about this story though, does anyone else kind of want one of the prints? I don't know, there's something about it. Number 2, the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond has shown up more than a few times on this channel, and for good reason. It's considered one of the most haunted rocks on the planet. The diamond was first uncovered in India, with reports purporting that the diamond was plucked from the eye of a statue of the goddess Sita, the goddess of beauty and devotion. Legend has it that the first person who stole the diamond was mauled by dogs shortly after taking it. That's a pretty quick curse. From here, the diamonds passed through countless hands, never staying in one place for too long. It's said to have been owned by King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who, as far as I know, never had anything too bad happen to her. Nothing worth losing your head over worrying about. That's a little history joke for you. Throughout the diamond's storied history, it's been said that just about every owner suffered a horrific fate. 14 confirmed deaths and owners throughout history, and that's only the ones we know of for sure, as there could be countless more. The jeweler who recut the stone into its current form, William Falls, died a ruined man in poverty and hardship. His son Hendrik stole the stone from his father, who would later be prompted to take his own life for the crime. After passing from owner to owner under grisly circumstances, it made its way to Harry Winston, an American jeweler who, possibly making the only good choice of anyone on this list, thought it better to play with his odds and donated the diamond to the Smithsonian Museum in 1958, where it currently resides, sealed away. The curators of the Smithsonian were thrilled to receive it and have said that they consider the gem a crown jewel, and that in all the time it's been in their watch, no one has suffered any ill effects. Maybe Indiana Jones was right. It belongs in a museum. That's too many Indiana jokes in one video. Too many Indiana jokes. I'm excited about the new one. I can't believe old Harrison Ford's coming back again for the millionth time. He's always coming back. Number 1, Robert the Doll. Every good list of cursed objects should definitely include one cursed doll. I know we had the Shadow Doll up there, but that was like a starter cursed doll. We got better ones. So that's why we're gonna finish up this list for today with a classic haunted doll. Dolls are just inherently a little bit scary when they're not being used for make-believe, and they're especially scary when they carry a series of unfortunate urban legends with them, like the case of Robert the Doll. Maybe you've even heard of Robert the Doll, maybe from this very own channel, maybe from this very own host, because I mentioned him in the first video that I ever did. It's all full circle. He's one of the more notable cursed dolls out there. If you're in the cursed doll community, you probably know him. Robert has been haunting for over a century. He used to be the property of one Robert Jean Otto. Although he shared a name with the doll, he preferred to be called Otto. Maybe because of the doll he wanted to be called Otto. Anyway, Otto received Robert as a boy from his grandfather, who obtained the doll through unknown means. Trying to trace wherever it came from has proven fruitless, as no toy company has ever been found to have produced it. Now, the young Otto loved Robert and had a very active imagination to a degree that would unsettle his parents. He would refer to the doll in first person and brought it everywhere with him, even dressed it in his own clothing. Otto would say that he would hear Robert talk to him and would see him move. Children who passed the homestead when walking by would say that they claim that they saw Robert in the windows watching them. Otto would blame all these mishaps on Robert. Injuries, breaks, anything that happened, it was because Robert had told him to do it or that Robert the doll had done it. And this behavior kind of understandably deeply worried Otto's parents. Otto kept Robert until the day of his death in 1974, where he then traveled from home to home, causing a path of misfortune wherever he went until he eventually found himself in the Key West Art and Historical Society, where he's now kept under very tight lock and key and has become the museum's most popular attraction, where visitors leave him offerings, treats, and even writing letters asking for protection or for him to curse others. Employees of the museum say sometimes they feel uncomfortable around him and have noticed a chill in the air by his seat or electrical malfunctions near where he sits. It's been said that they need to stay on his good side lest they provoke his wrath. Maybe it's a good thing then that he's locked up tight in that glass case, and there's just something about this guy. And Robert the doll, if you're watching right now, just want you to know all that stuff I was saying, I was just playing. You know we're friends. You know we've always gone together, you and I. You know I'm a big fan of the scary doll community. I just wanted to make it clear, we're cool.
Number 5 on this list is Robert the doll. Robert the doll is one of the most haunted and cursed dolls on the entire planet. Ghosts and Gravestones says the story of Robert the doll dates back to the early 1900s when a young boy named Eugene Robert Otto was given a one-of-a-kind handmade doll by a servant that worked for his parents in his home. Eugene, who everybody called Gene, named the doll Robert and quickly became attached to his new friend. The home where Eugene lived, now called the Artist's House, is located at 534 Eaton Street and was built between 1890 and 1898. It was here that Eugene was given Robert the doll and where a friendship that lasted throughout his lifetime and beyond was forged. While he seemed like an ordinary cloth doll, it wasn't long before Robert was involved in strange and somewhat terrifying events. The first hint that something out of the ordinary was happening was one night when Gene, who was only 10 years old, awoke to find Robert the doll sitting at the end of his bed, staring at him. Moments later, his mother was awakened by his screams for help and the sounds of furniture being overturned in her son's bedroom. Gene cried for help, begging his mother to rescue him. When she was finally able to wrench the locked door open, she saw poor Gene curled up in fear on his bed, his room in shambles, and Robert the doll sitting at the foot of the bed. And all the child could say was Robert did it. Now, this was the first instance where Robert was acting up, but there have been tons of experiences since then where this doll is just doing things that really shouldn't be doing. He now lives in East Martello, where visitors flock to see him, although it's a bad idea. There are letters and notes all around Robert from people that have come to see him, all begging for Robert's forgiveness. Apparently, taking a picture of Robert without his permission will cause him to start to haunt you. This curse has affected hundreds to thousands of people, and they all usually end up coming back to Robert begging for freedom from this curse. At this point, paranormal investigators have learned that messing with Robert really isn't the best idea, and just leaving this doll alone, probably the smartest thing to do. Number 4 on this list is the screaming skull. Last I checked, if there is no meat on the bone, then a skull shouldn't be screaming. That's kind of what's going down with this one extremely haunted skull in Burton Agnes Hall, England. Instablog says, what if you touch an object and then you hear terrible, deafening screams? That is precisely what happens when you touch this skull at an Elizabethan manor in England. Burton Agnes Hall is the house of Catherine Ann Griffith, who was brutally murdered by numerous bullies in 1620. Her skull still rests inside the house. Why? Because whenever somebody tried to take it out of the house, what happened next terrified them to the bone. People who have tried to touch or disturb that skull have reported seeing a scary ghost walk in and utter a deafening scream. This scared the people so much that they actually ran out of the house in terror. If you're up for a scary challenge, then this might be your chance to prove your mettle to the world, but for the weak-hearted ones, it's wise to stay away. And yeah, guys, I mean, I agree with that article right there. Probably best not to mess with this thing. I mean, a bunch of paranormal investigators won't even go here anymore. If a bunch of paranormal investigators think that this area is too scary for them, then Sorry guys, I'm tapping out. It's way too scary for me too. Number 3 on this list is the Maori warrior masks. Now these warrior masks hold a curse that won't affect everyone, just a small portion of people. Specifically, women who are soon to be expecting children. The Occult Museum says New Zealand's Maori warriors are part of an ancient tribe who would carve unique masks when it was time for battle. When a man died in the mask, it was believed that his soul would remain trapped in the mask they were wearing. Although their mythology does not dictate that any harm is done by the trapped souls, the presence of the masks has a strange and sometimes fatal effect on pregnant women. Women who are expecting often experience complications when they come in contact with the masks. It's unknown why this phenomenon occurs, but the museum that holds the remaining masks posts a warning that pregnant women should stay away. The literal museum is out here warning pregnant women not to come. That's how you know that this thing's seriously dangerous. Like whenever a business or enterprise does something that's actually gonna lose them money, that's when you have my attention. Considering they just lost an entire demographic of people, I'm now listening and buying into this curse. The paranormal investigators who aren't pregnant have taken a look at this, and they're having a hard time getting to the bottom of it. Some people have suggested that the Maori tribe thought that pregnant women were taboo, but that also doesn't really make any sense, because then how would they have repopulated their tribe? Regardless of why it is the way that it is, just know that if you are expecting, that's not the right time to take a look at these masks. Number 2 on this list is the Surrey ghost car. So this is a weird one and definitely something that paranormal investigators are a bit spooked by. List 25 says crashes are common on the A3 highway in England, so it looked like a routine matter when police in Surrey received calls that a car had veered off the A3 with its headlights blazing. But when officers went to investigate, they found no signs of the reported vehicle. However, a further search revealed chilling results. Just 60 feet from the reported crash scene, and buried in twisted undergrowth, was the remains of a wrecked car containing a decomposing body of a young man who, as the police estimated, had crashed there 5 months earlier. Therefore, what the witnesses reported might have been a ghostly apparition of the original car. Now, how on earth does that make any sense at all? You know what, let me answer that for you. It doesn't. First off, how did no one notice this car earlier? And then, what was that ghostly apparition that had a car veer off the road? Paranormal investigators are all scared of this one because who knows what type of effect this ghost car could have on your vehicle. And finally, number 1 on this list is the cursed mirror. This mirror isn't just cursed with a bad reflection, it's gonna show you something a lot worse than just you with a little bedhead or something. Instablog says, if you've seen Oculus, then chances are already you're scared of mirrors. And let's not even go back to the time when Bloody Mary was a whole thing. But if these creepy images of mirrors in the horror genre weren't enough, here's a real object which is most likely cursed. In St. Francisville, Louisiana, there's a plantation house which is one of the most haunted houses in America. Inside the house is this mirror, a cursed mirror. Legend goes that the plantation slave brutally killed the owner of the house, named Sarah Woodruff, and her daughters inside the house. Ever since then, they remain trapped inside the mirror. Visitors often report sights of handprints on the mirror, along with some unexplainable strange marks. And the classic haunting is also rumored, figures dressed in white, old-fashioned attire, visible on the other side of the mirror. Some people who have been exposed to this mirror for longer than they should say that these figures in white follow them around too, that they've even seen them appear in other mirrors outside of the plantation, and 1 or 2 of them have talked about how they've seen them outside of a mirror entirely, as if they were standing like right in front of them. It seems like the longer that you're exposed to this, the more of an impact the curse will have on you. Kind of like, I don't know, radiation poisoning or something like that, where the time you spend among the toxin, that's gonna hurt you more. Obviously, because of this, paranormal investigators don't want to spend too long investigating this mirror. A short stint doing some research probably won't hurt you, although it will definitely give you a scare considering you're going to see the figures on the other side. But extended exposure is where the real danger lies with this cursed item.
Number 5. The Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult. Owned by a couple, Dana and Greg Newkirk, who realized one day that they had a passion for the paranormal and a collection worth boasting about, they opened a museum with the intention of getting people to experience the paranormal as close as they could. The thinking being that we don't usually get to experience it up close, this museum provides a one-of-a-kind horror experience. Some of the gems of the collection include a piece of the real-life Amityville horror house, the infamous haunting, or how about the Catskills crone, a terrifying hand-carved idol of a human with nails jammed into the eyes, allegedly tied to a supernatural entity called the crone. The Restless painting, a cursed painting notorious for flinging itself across rooms, or if that's all not enough for you, perhaps the terrifying begging bowl, an ancient Tibetan offering made out of a human skull, designed for rituals where the offerer would feed the skull wine, bread, and blood in exchange to temper the raging spirits of demons for good fortune. Now, there's no question the Traveling Museum is one of the most unique collections on the planet, and lucky for you, it's always moving. But if you're looking for good scares, you don't need to travel anywhere, because you already know the best scares are coming to you twice a day, every day at Top 5 Scary. Stay subscribed and stay scared. Number 4. Zaffy's Museum of the Paranormal. Now, for most of us, we probably wouldn't think of mixing cursed items in with the decor. I wouldn't want to bring that dark energy home with me. I get enough bad vibes as it is. Well, for John Zaffis, he welcomes it with open arms. What kind of person would want to do that? Well, if I told you that Zaffis was the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, would it make a bit more sense? Feeling inspired by his aunt and uncle, Zaffis too became a collector of the paranormal and an investigator of the unknown. Must run in the family. He worked alongside his aunt and uncle on several of their cases where he was tutored by them in the ways of the paranormal, leading him to become a respected hunter in his own right. Following in their footsteps, he opened his own museum of his own demonic relics. His collection includes souvenirs from the cases he's worked on in the past, much like his relatives. Some highlights of the collection include a black cast iron human skull that was discovered inside an unnamed political family's house, a black idol that was used for satanic rituals, a sword that was apparently used to conjure black magic, and a whole lot more. Now don't worry, everything Zaffy's taken in is safe, it's been cleansed, and he's very careful with his vetting process. Apparently anything too cursed for him to feel safe bringing into the museum, he throws into a body of water. So just be careful swimming around the museum, I suppose. Now, the museum is currently closed, but Zaffis is searching for a new location to open up again soon. Hopefully somewhere with some nice thick walls. Keep all that evil energy in check. Number 3. The Museum of Death. Well, that's a cheery name, isn't it? You have to imagine with a name like the Museum of Death, there's something suspicious going on. Nope, not particularly. It's owned by a very cheery couple who built it in 1995 in the city's first mortuary. Their intended mission is to make people happy to be alive, which actually is very terrifying and ominous in a sort of Jigsaw, cherish your life sort of way. It's intended as a commemoration of life, just with a heavy focus on the last stage of life. It serves as a grim look at death, although the owners insist they don't want to scare anyone, but they're not trying to sanitize death either. Instead, they choose to show the reality of it, all the grisly details and all. As such, the museum is a site of controversy for quite some time, as some people find the exhibits a bit extreme. Some people go so far as to say it's tasteless, with footage of autopsies being shown and a collection of all sorts of relics from some of the evilest of evil criminals, Jeffrey Dahmer to name one. The museum boasts an impressive collection of bones, skulls, coffins, ancient morticians' tools and execution equipment, and all manner of macabre curios guaranteed to leave you feeling uneasy. Now, it should be noted, the museum is absolutely not at all for those with a squeamish stomach, and really should be reserved for those with a real dark interest in the dead. Number 2. Ed and Lorraine's Occult Museum. Now, it's hard to talk about a list of cursed museums full of the devil's objects without mentioning the Warrens' legendary Museum of the Paranormal. It almost goes without saying. It's probably one of the most famous haunted collections on the globe. Ed and Lorraine were storied demonologists, and the chances are extremely good. If you've even seen 2 videos by us, you've probably heard about them a million times. But It's still one of the coolest museums of cursed objects on the planet and is packed to the gills. It would be just wrong to leave it out of this list. Although the pair have since passed a while ago, the museum is now upheld by their son-in-law, Tony Spera, who carries on the mantle for them. The museum sits in a large shed just outside the Warrens' former property. I guess it's best to keep the evil close to home. The museum houses all sorts of dark souvenirs from the Warrens' storied past and is a veritable who's who for Conjuring and Warren fans. You can get a chance to get up close and personal with the real Annabelle, snap a selfie with her if you dare, or take a look at the cursed shadow doll made of real human teeth and bird feathers, or perhaps a satanic idol retrieved from the woods that caused Lorraine to become violently ill when brought in. If the Warrens were on the case, then they've brought something back sitting on that shelf. Mr. Spera blesses everyone who visits the museum before entry, just in case there's any residual evil hanging around in the air you might be bringing in. A priest comes by too to bless all the items, keep them safe. The museum is currently closed to visitors, but Spera is working hard to have this piece of paranormal legacy reopened once again. Number 1, Zak Bagans' Haunted Museum. Now, if you're looking for the cream of the crop, if you're looking for the peak of the haunted museum circuit, well, then no one has worked harder for that distinction than Zak Bagans, the esteemed paranormal investigator and ghost adventure star. Zak's collection started when he was a young boy, when he would scour garage sales with his mom in hopes of finding strange occult objects. I wonder how often he was finding occult objects at garage sales. Since then, a lifelong obsession would eventually turn into one of the most impressive hoards of spooky finds under the sun. The museum is in Las Vegas, built on a property in 1938 that has been said to be home to dark spirits who pass there, and their energy remains behind. Before becoming a museum, it's rumored that it used to be home to secret orders that would perform dark rituals. Among some of Zak's more treasured haunted items are the Dybbuk box, a wine rack said to be home to the world's most malevolent poltergeist, a possessed rocking chair from the famous Glatzel case, inspiring The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and tons of relics from the world's most sinister criminals like Ed Gein or Ted Bundy. Now, it goes without saying that a building replete with haunted items is a melting pot for spirits and haunting sightings. The tour warns you and asks you to sign a waiver before entering that you're knowingly putting yourself at risk of endangerment from unknown forces. Now, staff at the museum have reported everything from seeing strange lights, shadows, hearing peculiar noises, feeling unwell around certain objects, all the way to real extremes like seeing mysterious figures and cloaked, robed people at night. If you're feeling up for it and you want to feel like a paranormal investigator yourself, the museum also offers solo tours at night with nothing but a flashlight to guide you. Just be aware of what you're going up against. Number 5, the Knife Blade Man. Discovered in 2018 in northern Italy, a group of archaeologists were digging up a massive gravesite of the Lombardo, an ancient Germanic people. Found in a necropolis, which is a very fancy word for a large, elaborate tomb, and maybe one of the best words in the English language, the team found hundreds of skeletons that were at the site, including horses and greyhounds, and for the most part, they're not particularly notable. You've seen one old bag of bones, you've seen them all, except for one skeleton that in the place of a forearm was an impressive blade. Now, this raises countless fascinating questions. Who was this guy? Was this the first Assassin's Creed protagonist? Some legendary madman of a warrior who lost an arm and thought, I don't know, put a blade on there, I can still fight? Well, the Lombardo people placed a great emphasis on war and combat in their culture, so it is possible. The researchers noted that there was a clear dated buckle around his arm, and pressure on the bones of his arm showed that it was an intentional prosthetic, right down to the wear and tear on his teeth, suggesting he tightened the straps for his hidden blade with his teeth. Most of the other skeletons found in the necropolis all had blades buried with them at their sides, perhaps ritually out of honor, but this unique specimen had it grafted onto his arm like he's history's first cyborg or Baraka from Mortal Kombat. To be able to not only survive an amputation, pre-antibiotics and modern medicine is already impressive. And hey, if you're always looking to learn something from knife arm skeletons, then toss a subscribe our way. Top 5 Scaries always got a couple scary videos for you every day. Let's creep on creeping on. Number 4, the hanging coffins. We're going up to China for our next one, specifically Hubei, China. There's a cave there that the locals call the Cave of the Fairies, and you've probably already realized that there's gonna be a dark secret involved with the Cave of Fairies. We never talk about anything nice here. It was said that the mythical creatures were supposed to live in the cave, but those who explored it inside found that there wasn't much of anything living at all, instead finding something deeply disturbing. Rows and rows of coffins, some hanging from ropes, some jammed, wedged between the rocks of the cave. The coffins themselves were massive, weighing around 200 pounds each, and some destroyed and ravaged. Dating the coffins puts them at around 1200 years old and are thought to have been put up by the ancient Bo people, an extinct culture hailing from China, famous for this unique practice of hanging coffins from caves. It's thought that this served two purposes: one, as a ritualistic offering meant to bless the dead, and two, from a practical, pragmatic sense, it would prevent any would-be carrion eaters from picking through to get a meal. Fascinatingly, it can be seen that all of the coffins were carved from a single tree, one big log. One wonders if that was part of the ritual element of it. Now, the coffins being smashed is interesting because the discoverers of the coffins theorized that the damage was actually pretty recent, dating it to the 1960s. And their prevailing theory was that someone wandered into this cave in a place of desperation and smashed the coffins to garner some firewood in the hopes that they could survive the night and not pass among the hanging dead. Let's just hope they didn't release any ancient curses at the same time. Number 3. The Black Sarcophagus. Now, you might have heard of this one before. If you were on Twitter much a couple years ago, maybe you remember vaguely hearing about sarcophagus juice. Maybe those words are ringing a strange bell. There was a pretty good petition going around to let people drink the sarcophagus juice. But let's back up a bit. What is sarcophagus juice and where did it come from and why do we want to drink it? Well, I've got the answers. Somewhat. I've got some answers. In 2018, a team of archaeologists digging in Alexandria, Egypt, discovered a massive granite black sarcophagus, which immediately set off everybody's warning signs that you should not touch that. People wondered what the 30-ton stone slab could be containing, with some even suggesting it could have been the mighty body of Alexander the Great. People warned the archaeologists that there, could be some ancient evil, like when King Tut's tomb was raided and a very strange curse befell the explorers and excavators. Well, what they found wasn't a hidden curse, but honestly something stranger. 3 skeletons inside the coffin with a skull shattered by an arrow and a whole lot of mysterious black goop, or sarcophagus juice. So again, looping right back around it. What is the sarcophagus juice and does it taste good? Well, scientists analyzed the sludge and discovered that it was made from a combination of animal fats, tree resin, beeswax, and crude oil. The sludge has been recovered out of multiple coffins and sarcophagi, so it's not exclusive to this dreaded one. But that doesn't explain why this nasty stuff is there. Well, there's some theories about this, no concrete answers, but I'll do my best. It's said that when someone died, they become a form of the god Osiris, who is associated with death and rebirth. Osiris was called the Black One and is depicted with very dark black skin in the guise of a mummified body. As well, black is also a color associated with the deposits on the bank of the River Nile after a flood season. Fresh and fertile soil was seen as inherently regenerative. So it's theorized that with the linking concepts of Osiris and the regeneration of the soil, soaking and filling the coffins with this black sludge was a very confusing part of the mummification process. Number 2. Headless Vikings. In 2008, a group of archaeologists were doing some fairly routine work in Dorset, a seaside town in England, in a rather dull job to improve local roads around the area. As could be expected, not too much of note was discovered, except for the mass grave of 54 headless Viking mercenaries. And not just were their skulls missing, but the rib cages, arms, and leg bones were all arranged neatly, surrounded by discarded teeth. No clothes or weaponry was discovered. So what happened? Because nothing my imagination is coming up with is conjuring anything good. Well, the bones revealed some fascinating finds, and I'll warn you now, by Odin's beard, they're all terrifying options. The teeth surrounding the grave were all filed down, but done neatly as if a craftsman had done it. Obviously, pre-Novocaine dental surgery wouldn't go down easy, so the process must have been excruciating, suggesting perhaps these men had it done to them out of some sort of punishment, or they did it to themselves to frighten their opponents and show them just how strong they were. Neither one of those options is particularly pleasant to consider. But now let's get spine chillin' with it. The archaeologists' prevailing theory about what happened to this big Nordic pile of bones is that looking at the wound patterns on the ribs and the torso bones were smart, surgical, precise blows, not matching with a rabid hack job you'd expect from a brawl. The archaeologists suggested that the Vikings weren't slain in battle, but rather offered up perhaps to some sort of strange, sadistic ritual, or perhaps a mass execution. It would explain why the men had no gear with them as well. The large number of bodies and intense cruelty of it suggests that there wasn't any trained executioners, leading to the prevailing theory that it's a dark, dark ritual. Number 1. Bog people. Name one good thing that's ever been found in a bog. Need some help? There's never been one. For peat farmers in northern Europe, it's a thankless life, working in wet, muddy bogs and occasionally finding leathery preserved bog mummies. Due to the low temperatures, lack of oxygen, and high acidity of bogs, bodies found there are preserved disturbingly well. Well, preserved is a bit of a misnomer. They're twisted and rived, but they're intact, sort of. It's hard to think of these as preserved well because they look like the scariest things you've ever seen, but the process is weirdly fascinating if you're interested in looking up something disgusting. This happens all over northwestern Europe, with no one specific case to point to. It happens all over Ireland, Germany, Great Britain, the Netherlands, and so on. The bodies range from anywhere as old as 8,000 years old, preserved, to the most recent appearing to have been from the early turn of our century. Now, no one really has any idea how many of these bog bodies could be out there, and no one really knows how the unfortunate bog victims ended up in their final muddy resting spot. Some of them could possibly have just been unlucky souls who found themselves lost and fell in. But another prevailing theory is that Roman Iron Age people in northern Europe sacrificed people to the bogs, which sounds too dark to be real, but apparently is. They would also offer people as sacrifice or as punishment for their perceived social imperfections, which, may I just say, I am very glad this practice isn't commonplace, because I would be cast into the bogs faster than you could say peat deposit.
Number 5 on this list is a cannon. Hong Kong is pretty much surrounded by water. Their entire culture is very connected to the water with fishing and boats. That's why finding things in the water isn't totally shocking. However, when that thing is a super heavy, super old cannon, then it's a tad bit more interesting. History Things says experts believe that this discovery might lead them to uncover more hidden treasures beneath the harbor city. Bill Jeffrey, the archaeologist working with Hong Kong's Underwater Heritage Group, comments that we see this as the tip of the iceberg. The Hong Kong SAR is 60% water, and yet nearly no archaeology has been done underwater here. The granite stock, which is known as the cross piece that can be found on most anchors, was around 6 feet long. This piece lay 10 feet below water and was situated near Hong Kong's High Island. After investigating this ancient maritime artifact, experts have discovered that this granite stock dates back between 960 to 1278 AD. This anchor fits the exact style and material that would have been used during China's Song Dynasty. I think what makes this so mysterious is that comment about how hardly any of the water has been explored for archaeology. Finding something like this underwater as they did can only mean one thing. Either somebody partied a little too hard 1,000 years ago and decided that taking a cannon out in the middle of the ocean and throwing it overboard was a good idea, or, and much more realistically, there are more archaeological finds to be had underwater. Who knows how many things they could discover just lying at the bottom of the ocean. Number 4 on this list is a tiny bird. Okay, so I'll be honest folks, this one isn't super mysterious, but it did come from China and it is wicked cool. The artifact is a very small bird sculpture, literally so tiny that you could probably fit 20 of them in one hand. It's made from blackened bone and doesn't really look like much. Just a very basic bird potentially sitting atop of a perch. So what makes this thing so special and why has it made our list? Well, this little bird is pretty freaking old. This tiny sculpture of a bird discovered at Lingjing, China is 13,500 years old. We're talking about something that is hundreds to thousands of generations older than we are right now. This Paleolithic bird, being the ripe young age of 13,500 years, is the oldest discovered 3D piece of art in all of East Asia. The way that it's made also indicates that there are a lot more of these little guys to be found. How smooth the sculpture is shows that this wouldn't have been a one-off from the artist and they knew what they were doing. I guarantee that whoever made this that many years ago couldn't even begin to comprehend that their tiny sculpture would make for a talking point on a YouTube video this many years later, and honestly, that's pretty cool. Number 3 on this list is bronze vessels. Indiana University says that these bronze vessels were found in tombs and were made for use in rites performed on ancestral altar or cast specifically for burial with the dead. Only Chinese kings and high-ranking nobility could afford such expensive and labor-intensive artifacts, which required a knowledge of mining, smelting, metallurgy, and casting to execute. From Shang Dynasty records comprised of some 200,000 inscriptions on bone and turtle shells, we know that Chinese ancestors were procreated with elaborate rites, feasts, and sacrifices. If ancestors were displeased with the activities of their descendants or the rituals offered to them, they might fail to act on their progeny's behalf or even cause their descendants harm. This could come in the form of poor harvests, droughts, or famine. The Chinese believed in a complex world of spirits which comprised a multitude of nature deities, royal ancestors, and others who controlled important earthly phenomena such as weather, harvests, births, deaths, and military campaigns. So it's pretty clear that these bronze vessels played a role in the rituals the Chinese performed with their dead, but the passage also leads me to believe that they may have been involved in causing people to die in the first place. These are ritualistic artifacts, and considering the Chinese believed in a complex world of spirits, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that they may have used these in rituals to curse someone with a poor harvest or even death. To use these bronze vessels in appealing to a deity and have that deity help them with their current issue. Of course, I'm only speculating here, and the exact use of these things in rituals will probably remain a mystery. Number 2 on this list is the Sangsuidu masks. The Sangsuidu masks are some of the most recent and most mysterious discoveries that archaeologists have made in China in quite some time. Aaron Reich says, remains of a gold mask dating back 3,000 years were found in a huge treasure trove of artifacts discovered at an archaeological site in China's Sichuan province, which sheds more light on an ancient civilization that remains mysterious to historians. The mask consists of around 84% gold, measures 28 centimeters high and 23 centimeters wide, and weighs about 280 grams, according to the English Language Daily reported. But according to Lei Yu, head of the Sangsuidu site excavation team, the whole mask would weigh over half a kilogram. If a whole mask like this was found, it wouldn't just be the largest and heaviest gold object from that period found in China, but the heaviest gold object found from that time period anywhere. The mask remains one of over 500 artifacts found in the cache at the site. The Sichuan province is one of the most mysterious provinces in China. These masks are gorgeous too and look to be extremely valuable. No one currently knows what they were used for. Something this beautiful has to be connected to royalty or to some sort of ancient and important ritual. Potentially something that someone might wear when performing a ritual that would connect them to a god or some other deity. Very little is known about this dynasty and their practices, so sadly these masks and what they were used for will also remain a mystery. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army has got to be the most famous Chinese artifacts to have ever been discovered. There's just simply nothing in the world that comes close to rivaling their uniqueness. Chinese workers digging a well in 1974 made a startling discovery: thousands of life-size terracotta figures of an army prepared for battle. Now called the Terracotta Army or Terracotta Warriors, the figures are located in 3 pits near the city of Xi'an in China's Shaanxi province. After the warriors were discovered, the site became a museum and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. The pits are situated less than 1 mile to the northeast of a pyramid-shaped mausoleum constructed for the first emperor of China, Xi Zhangquan. According to UNESCO World Heritage Center, archaeologists suspect that the unexcavated tomb could contain an entire replica of the city of Xi'an, which the warriors guard. The 3 pits contain an estimated 8,000 life-size terracotta figures, of which about 2,000 have been excavated. The figures were created to serve the emperor in the afterlife and include a mix of chariots, cavalry, armored soldiers, and archers. There are high-ranking officers, and one of the pits, number 3 actually, served as a command post for the army and contains an honor guard and ornate chariot for the force's chief commander. All 3 pits are active archaeological sites and visitors can see excavations taking place. Maybe the most mysterious thing about all of this is what is in the unexcavated tomb that they're guarding. Based on how the tomb is situated, it's currently impossible to go inside without destroying some of the history, and this is why it remains unsearched. But one has to imagine that whatever is inside of it could be extremely valuable. Whatever is in that unopened tomb warranted the building of over 8,000 statues to guard it. I don't know if I've ever done anything 8,000 times, let alone build extremely intricate statues. Hit me with a comment down below on what you believe these ancient soldiers are actually guarding.
Number 5, the Anguished Man painting. Yeah, at first I thought this whole thing was a hoax, but checks off all the right boxes, doesn't it? Artist is an unknown painter, there's real blood mixed in with the paint. The artist then took their own life after they finished the painting. Sounds a bit made up. Well, The original owner, Sean Robinson, claims that his grandmother was the one who actually inherited this painting and gave it to him, saying that there was real blood mixed into this. Okay. His grandmother had claimed that the picture had always seemed to be attached to evil, and even saw a dark figure resembling a man always standing around the painting. After having strange things happen around Sean's house, he too said that he started seeing a shadowy figure, almost like a man now, standing at the bottom of his bed night after night. Sean decided to reach out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators from Connecticut. He tried keeping the painting around at one point, even tried to sell it online, but for some reason it never sold. Sean said the painting became too dangerous and things were getting worse around the house, and decided to give the Warrens the painting for safekeepings. Good idea, Sean. They have the painting locked away in their basement at their home, aka the occult museum for everything haunted. The painting is kept out of sight and no one is allowed to even look at it in person, for it draws evil energy, right? What do you think? I mean, the more I look at this thing, the more it scares the hell out of me. It is jarring. Number 4, Devil's Rocking Chair. I love a good rocking chair. Something soothing about it, you know? All the motion. Very relaxing. Rocking chairs. Rocking on their own, however. No, I don't do that at all. And this one is supposed to be you-know-whose personal chair. The Devil's Rocking Chair, which was bought for $67,000 from Ed and Lorraine Warren's site, is in the care of one Zach Baggins. This guy runs a haunted museum in Vegas and purchased the chair understanding fully what it does and is. The chair, originally used in the exorcism of David Glatzel in the 80s by the Warrens themselves, a true case involving murder and demonic possession. A true case. Some have seen a beast sitting in the chair, some have seen a dark, shadowy man. And the horrifying part, Baggins had to shut down his exhibit in 2019 because the chair was causing guests to have emotional breakdowns and episodes. One guest even passed out walking directly above the chair on the staircase. Slowly started to become a safety hazard, and Zach decided to remove the newest haunted item from his exhibit completely. Before Zach put the rocking chair in his exhibit, he said the only day it was in his home, him and a friend both had a very strange breakdown. Both of them crying uncontrollably and even speaking religious sayings obsessively. Number 3, Thomas Busby Chair. I thought it would definitely be more like skulls and dolls and stuff, but it seems so far that it's pretty much only furniture holds evil spirits. How about that? Another chair. Haunted, of course, and this tale is a chilling one. Not like the others aren't. The Thomas Busby Stoop Chair, or also famously known as Dead Man's Chair, is said to be a cursed object from the owner himself, Mr. Busby. This hardwood, allegedly haunted oak chair was cursed by the murderer Thomas Busby before his execution hanging in 1702 in North Yorkshire, England. Thomas Busby was arrested, tried, and condemned to death after he murdered his father-in-law, Daniel Audie, in 1702. Audie and Busby were running a coin counterfeiting business. After an argument about the business, Busby killed Audie. One variation of this story has Busby cursing the chair while on his way to the execution, whereas another says he was drunk in the chair that he was arrested in and cursed it, right then and there. Due to the many deaths later attributed to people sitting in the chair, the landlord donated it to the Thirsk Museum in the same town where it is having difficulty with guests sitting on top of it. It now stays hung above the floor near the ceiling where no one can even sit on it. That's good. Numerous deaths have been linked to this chair, from soldiers not returning home from war, to delivery drivers crashing their trucks hours later, to people even having strokes and heart attacks sitting in it. Death seems to be imminent anywhere this thing goes. It's been hung up since 2014 and remains there today. Number 2. The Cursed Mirror. Originally sitting in the main foyer in its 17th century antebellum home in Louisiana, this haunted object has been witness to some nasty history. The Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana is the home to deep-rooted slavery. The American South is known for its disgusting use of slave labor and would be the home in which this haunted piece sits. The house owned first by Mr. and Mrs. Clark Woodruff. These were racist plantation owners, and violent ones at that. It is said that the couple were very sadistic towards abuse of the slaves. A young woman by the name of Chloe was particularly abused when eavesdropping on a conversation Woodruff was having one night, resulting in him cutting both of her ears off. That's so unnecessary. Her mutilation was hidden, but Chloe planned her revenge quickly and decided to poison a cake which Mrs. Woodruff and her 2 children would be eating. She killed all 3 of them and was caught, tried, and hanged for her crime. It is Chloe's ghost in which experts say haunts the cursed mirror from the plantation. Ghostly women are seen in the mirror walking by, and smudged handprints are always seen, even with new trimmings and polished glass. The cursed mirror is believed to have Chloe's spirit trapped inside of it. By gazing into the mirror, evil things apparently would happen, resulting in health problems. Weird things happen around this mirror, and where it lays now, that's Ed and Lorraine's business. Ed and Lorraine are taking care of it, of course, thank God, and it sits in the couple's occult museum in Connecticut. ungazeable. Today, the Myrtles plantation has been changed into a bed and breakfast, but still remains one of America's most haunted houses. What do you think? And coming in at number 1, Annabelle. Possibly the most infamous and dangerous possessed artifact found at the home of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Their occult museum is the home of the Annabelle doll. We know a little bit about this doll, of course, with all the films about her in the last couple years. Tons of people have flocked to the museum to take pics in front of her vase. She rests inside a glass case ominously marked "Warning. Positively do not touch." Warned. She was previously owned by a nursing student, Donna, in 1970. Gifted from her mother from a thrift store, after some creepy incidents involving the doll like levitating onto the table and moving around by itself, she took the doll to a medium who revealed it is possessed by the spirit of a little girl who died young. Ed and Lorraine were eventually called after the incidents would not stop, and they offered to take it to their home. However, this is the scary part on the drive home. Ed himself said that the doll was making the car do things out of his control. Stuffed in a bag, doused in holy water, he still felt the presence. The engine kept turning off, power steering would all of a sudden lock up. The hardest part was getting it into a safe locked case in their museum, where it's been ever since. Thank goodness. The doll holds evil power and demonic possession, Lorraine says, and she refuses to even make eye contact with it. Yeah, you know it's bad when they won't even look it in the eye, huh? The museum unfortunately has been shut down since 2019, but the cursed objects still seem to be staying put.
Number 5. St. Catherine's head. Coming up first on our list of strange artifacts that the Catholic Church has hidden away is the severed, mummified head of the revered St. Catherine of Siena. You wouldn't really expect there to be a severed head kept out on display, but it is an important head, I've come to understand. When she was young, St. Catherine had a vision of Jesus on a throne surrounded by saints. Afterwards, she devoted her life to Catholicism and she gave herself to the nunnery, cut her hair, scalded herself, and took a vow of celibacy. At 28, Catherine was said to have received the stigmata when 5 red rays shot out of the crucifix she was praying to and pierced her hands, her feet, and her heart. But these were far from the only miracles attributed to the lovely St. Catherine, however. She was said to be seen levitating once during prayer, and even once a priest said he saw a Holy Communion fly from his hand directly into her mouth. Now, I will be honest, that does make her sound a bit like a saintly golden retriever, but okay. Catherine would pass at the young age of 33 and would be canonized a century later. If you don't know, that's a fancy word for being made into a saint post-mortem. While she passed in Rome, there was some disagreement as to where the young saint should be laid to rest eternally. Her hometown of Siena quite wanted her body back. Her spiritual leader, Raymond of Capua, knew he wouldn't really be able to smuggle her entire body past guards in Rome, so he elected to just take her head in a bag, which normally would be terrifying behavior, but it's good here. The story goes that when the guards intercepted Raymond, he prayed to Catherine, and when they looked inside his sack, they found naught but a collection of rose petals and not a severed head. Her final miracle. Now, the head was placed in a reliquary. That's a difficult word to say, especially on a teleprompter. The head was placed in a reliquary where it still remains today, and you can go and pray to it, and I promise it's not gonna blink or anything at you, even though it looks like it just might. And if you're looking for way more stories of creepy relics locked away, haunted object, cursed things, cryptids, conspiracies, aliens, the whole scary 9 yards, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So hit that little bell, hit subscribe, and make sure you do not miss a single thing. Do it after this video, okay? We got way more creepy things locked away coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Grand Grimoire. Our next entry has been formally referred to as the Gospel of Satan and is said to be a cursed book whose knowledge had to be sealed away to protect humanity. So this might be the most deadly book ever published after Hop on Pop. The Grand Grimoire, who is said to have been penned by a priest in the 16th century who was possessed by a litany of demons who compelled the man to put their knowledge to paper. Acting as a scribe for these demons, the man wrote everything they knew about dark incantations, spells, instructions on how to cast rituals, ways to bind a demon to you to make it your little minion and do your bidding. Wait, a demon gave instructions on how it wants to be bound to a human to serve humans? Freaky little demon. That's not all too. There's a step-by-step recipe for a little necromancy if you're down to dabble in some dark arts and make some bones dance to your rhythm. The book really covers all the fun stuff you have been told not to do. It's not just brimstone and hellfire neither. There's rituals to help manipulate luck, how to conduct a seance, and I actually think this is adorable. There's even ways to make people love you in there. But dating tip from old Tay, if you need a demon's help to make them like you, it might not be the strongest relationship. so just a heads up. Now, if all of this is sounding super appealing, and I don't blame you, I played a necromancer in Skyrim, I want to make the bones raise, just know that this book is considered high treason. Even so much as cracking the spine is considered equivalent to selling your soul. So, you know, maybe hold off on that Amazon order for a bit. Also, I'm pretty sure the copy they're selling on Amazon is not the original, because due to the book's cursed reputation, the original copy is said to be locked away in the Vatican's secret archives, and I'm sorry, but no matter how many times you ask, they're not gonna let you look at it, even if you swear you're just taking a little peek just to look at the illustrations and maybe the dedications. They're gonna keep it locked up. I know. Number 3, Hyacinth of Caesarea. Our next entry is the bones of Hyacinth of Caesarea, another Catholic mummy. I'm starting to think there's more Catholic mummies than there were Egyptian ones. Incredibly ornate and gorgeous, the bones of Hyacinth look like something out of one of the Indiana Jones sequels, rather than like a real thing you can go and see, but I promise you they are totally extant. On the grounds of the Fürstenfeld Abbey reside the relics of 2 saints. Now, these aren't just like a toenail or a tongue, and more on that later, but these are full-on science class skeletons dressed to the 9 in gold and jewels, encrusted in more diamonds and rubies than you could imagine. They are probably worth more than your and my apartments combined. Old Hyacinth, Hisey, as he liked to be called by his friends, was an obscure martyr from the early days of Christianity, slain by the Romans for his faith. We know precious little about him today, but we know that his name appears in a list of martyrs from the 4th century, which suggests that he used to be pretty important, and he was popular enough to write his name down on a list, much like what I'm doing right now. Look at how history repeats itself like that. Isn't that fascinating? Now, Hyacinth's skeleton showed up at the Church of the Assumption in, I'm going to excuse the pronunciation here, Fürstenfeldbruck near Munich at an unknown date. Did somebody just drop him off? Somebody just dumped a bag of bones on the front step like he's a baby you're giving up for adoption at the fire station? No more questions. The church was sacked by the Swedish army in the 17th century, and when it was rebuilt, they really went all out with the decor, going over the top, a little baroque, including a skeleton decked out in bling, looking like he is about to take over the skeleton rap scene. So that's Hyacinth, largely not remembered in life for any particular reason beyond being slain for his religion, and remembered forever as a ludicrously swagged out skeleton. We can all only hope for similar legacies as dear sweet Hyacinth. Number 2, the tongue of Saint Padilla. Did you know your tongue is made up of 8 muscles? Maybe you didn't. Did you know that one of the most important relics to the Catholic Church is a dried up 8,000-year-old tongue that looks like beef jerky kept inside a golden helmet that looks like something out of a dark fantasy 80s movie? Well, now you do. And have you enjoyed how much of this list is mummified bodies in gold? Because I have. St. Anthony was said to be a jewel case of the Bible, making a name for himself with his apparently extremely inspirational sermons that won the Catholic Church many new members. People would flock in just to hear what St. Anthony was talking about. Apparently, he even got a bunch of ex-Christians to reform and rejoin the faith. He was apparently an incredibly accomplished public speaker, and I would say that he had a silver tongue, but we actually have proof of what color his tongue was because it's kept in a little glass jar. St. Anthony would pass away in 1231 from edema, a horrible disease that causes a buildup and blockage of fluid in the body's tissues. Now, some 30 years later, in 1263, he was exhumed, and shocking the gravediggers who were doing it, while his body had rotted and decomposed, his legendary tongue was still intact, as incorruptible as it had been in life, allegedly still wet with saliva. I wonder if he could still taste. Seeing it was a miracle, the gravediggers took his tongue alongside the bottom half of his jaw, and they are both displayed in the Basilica of St. Anthony of Padua in elaborate gold reliquaries. But honestly, it looks like something straight out of Warhammer 40k. Does no one think this is as odd as I do? Maybe I'm an outsider. I didn't grow up terribly Catholic, so I don't really know these imagery. I know the story behind it isn't terribly scary, but the image of this tongue and jaw inside a little glass helmet wrapped in gold looks like something I would ask an AI to make if I typed in nightmare. A tongue shouldn't look like that. And I feel like a jaw shouldn't look like that either. Am I alone in this? Am I weird for thinking this is weird? You let me know down below in the comments if maybe I just lack context on all of this. And number 1, Camillus de Lellis' heart. Camillus de Lellis was a man with a big heart full of love, never unending in generosity. We know just how big his heart is because it is kept in a glass jar and it is salted to preserve its legacy. Camillus started out pretty humble, born in 16th century Naples. He would later become a soldier until a brutal gambling problem would end up overtaking his life, leaving him in rags, driving a donkey cart, but he knew that a far better life was out there. Eventually, he was urged by a friar to explore the lighter side of his soul, and eventually someone was able to pierce his heart both figuratively and later literally, and persuaded him into seeking divine retribution. Camillus would devote his life to providing for the ailing, but tragically, and perhaps unsurprisingly if you spent all your time around sick people before modern medicine, a lifetime of caring for the sick led to him also becoming gravely ill, soaking up a litany of ailments, including a sore in his leg for 46 years, a rupture for 38 years, 2 callous sores in the sole of a foot, violent nephritic colics, intense kidney pain, and for a long time a loss of appetite. Now all of these things, working in tandem, would eventually claim Camillus, a man who gave his life to healing the sick. So post-mortem he was canonized and thought of as the patron saint of the sick. And what better way, I ask, to venerate a man famous for his ever-giving heart than to cut his heart out like he was in the Temple of Doom and start salting his heart like it was beef jerky. You can go to St. Mary Magdalene's Church in Rome to go see if his heart, put a stethoscope up to it, check if it's still beating, but it's pretty dried up and tucked away behind glass where you can go and pay your respects and see if it has any life left to bestow and maybe if it'll help you out with an illness at all.
Iceman, also known as Otzi, this mummy currently resides at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. Though this mummy was discovered in the 90s, it's said to be the body of a man who lived around 3345 BCE. Now, Iceman is the oldest known mummy from Europe, and since he was found, he has been rumored to hold a terrible curse. This is because several people with links to the mummy have passed in very tragic accidents. Forensic expert Rainer Henn was on his way to give a lecture about Iceman when he was actually unalived in a car crash. Now, Kurt Fritz, a mountaineer who directed scientists to the body, was also unalived in an avalanche while the rest of his party survived. The Goddess of Demise statue. Now, the Royal Scottish Museum is home to an ancient relic that you do not want in your possession, also known as Woman from Lem, the Goddess of Demise statue seems, to curse every family that basically owns it. The statue was discovered in Cyprus in 1878 and dates from around 3500 BC. The 7 members of the first family who owned it reportedly all passed within just 6 years of acquiring it, and similar fates met the family that followed. Now, historians lost track of the artifact for a long time, but the third owners eventually donated it to the museum before they all perished as well. The Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is probably the world's most well-known jewel. It is also totally cursed. Since 1958, it has called the National Museum of Natural History home and hasn't managed to befall anyone with a tragic fate. But before that, many of its owners seemed to perish in odd and very mysterious ways. Several of the people who were in possession of the diamond passed by self-inflicted harm, and several were assassinated. One was even torn to pieces by wild dogs, while another was torn to pieces by a French mob. Let's just say I'm happy that no single person is now considered the owner, because they would definitely be doomed. Which museum are you interested in visiting? Have you been in close contact with any of these cursed items? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley, and until next time, stay scared. These disturbing stories from Ohio will prove that America is haunted, starting with the Thurber House in Columbus, Ohio. James Thurber lived in the house from 1913 to 1917, and during his time there, he suffered from various health issues, including a detached retina, which left him almost blind. In 1915, Thurber's brother, William, passed away in the house due to complications from a burst appendix. Currently, the Thurber House is a museum dedicated to the American author and cartoonist who lived there and even experienced ghostly encounters of his own. But centuries ago, the property was built on traces of the Ohio Lunatic Asylum, specifically near the State of Ohio Asylum for the Insane Cemetery. Now, in 1868, the Ohio Lunatic Asylum burned down and the land was divided into 3 residential parts, one of which later became the Thurber House. People who visit the house say they've seen books flying off the shelves and heard footsteps on the back staircase, as well as doors creaking and doors opening and closing on their own.
Yvonne Hydes is an events manager for the Scottish Ghost Company and has organized paranormal investigations across the country. And during one such event at Proven Hall, she received an old-looking doll from one of the members. After taking it home and placing it in her spare room, a number of strange incidents occurred on the property. So we do have some video footage today of the absolute chaos that was happening in Yvonne's house. The bizarre series of paranormal activity culminated in an investigation in a park where Yvonne is adamant she saw the creepy doll blink. She told Glasgow Live one of the members' friends had brought the doll to him after being on holiday in the north of England. They bought it from some charity shop. And she tends to be the recipient of a lot of weird things. Most of the dolls she has in her possession are all hand-me-downs, and they don't bother her. But that night, with that doll, it was making her feel uncomfortable. So she had mentioned her friend David, who works as a medium, absolutely hates this doll. When our lovely witness brought it home, he was like, I'm gonna keep that in the garage. And that made her a little worried. Suddenly, the Cocker Spaniel in the house took a dislike to the doll being in the room. It started barking and shaking. And if you know, animals tend to be the most susceptible to weird spirits. One day, our witness came downstairs and saw one of her really heavy lamps sitting in the middle of the living room. Her son came in and was like, hey, are we moving stuff around? Nope. More objects were being moved around each morning and weird electrical things started to happen. Turns out they have like an electrical vacuum that is programmed to come out at 10:30 each night. Well, she was turning off the lights one morning and it like went out and did its own thing. So she looked on the website and it hadn't been registered as being active at the time. So when David took his turn bringing the doll home throughout the night, he also reported knocking and footsteps that just didn't make sense. So the Scottish Ghost Company took this doll to a park to investigate it. They did a little live stream on TikTok, on Facebook, they tied a red light around the doll's neck with hopes of allowing the spirit to transfigure its face onto the doll. Well, during the process, Yvonne and a few others on live stream were like, yeah, that doll blinked. So it was then up to the team if they wanted to bury it or keep it. They decided to keep it, so I'm sure I'll do an updated video in like a year and it's gonna be everything awful. A spooked man believes his flat is haunted after he filmed a lot of objects moving by themselves. So this bizarre video, which was captured at the man's home in Fayetteville in North Carolina, shows a number of items that are just throwing themselves off a kitchen counter. So the video was posted on Reddit and a lot of folks were like, okay, maybe there was like a piece of string, you know, maybe we were just like doing some really great magic. And I was also kind of skeptical, but then I saw everything moving. The papers were fluttering and I was gonna be like, okay, fraud with a fan. But then the toaster went flying and I was like, yeah, nope, that's legit. So the unnamed filmmaker who posted the video said that they came home to a couple of things out of place and decided to review the footage, and it scared the hell out of them, which, like, valid. Apparently they're like, yeah, maybe I was being paranoid, but they could feel something or someone looking at them. And they were seriously considering breaking their lease to move. So I checked the comments on the original Reddit post, and the man claimed there was like a couple of things that happened in the bathroom and the living room. Thankfully, nothing in the bedroom, primarily just the kitchen. And he's like, yeah, I've lived here close to a year. This started like 2 months ago. Now, granted, as of the time of me telling you this was like 7 years ago, and the original post was deleted, so I don't have an update, but I'm hoping the guy did break his lease and got the heck out of there. Ever balance on a chair so stupidly that when it eventually tips, you blame the chair instead of your own stupidity? Well, today we have video of a chair doing a whoopsie without any human involvement. The owners of Cronies, a bar and restaurant in Ventura County in California, already lost their words after a surveillance video from the restaurant shows a bar stool falling over on its own, with nobody around. So for this to happen, it's pretty creepy, said the co-owner, Dave Folds. He's like, it's just really weird. We've been here 27 years and nothing like this has ever happened. Now, the owner was like, this is not a Halloween stunt. I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. Customers don't seem to be frightened by the potential haunting. They're like, oh, it's funny. It's interesting. Saying like, I'm okay until it's my chair that moves. Another customer was like, so many people come and go. Maybe this place is haunted. I got a feeling. So according to the co-owner, there's a lot of good spirits there. They were referring to like the photos that cover the walls of the restaurant. There's like customers, there's employees, everybody. But apparently the co-owner does have an idea of who might be responsible. Apparently Ralph and Don, the first originals of the restaurant, introducing the co-owner to his wife, passed like 20 years prior. And whenever something weird happens, they blame it on them. Which like, not smart, but okay, good luck. Sean Robinson ended up in possession of a petrifying painting more than 20 years ago after his beloved grandmother passed away. but this isn't something you might want to hold in your home. It had been kept hidden away by his grandmother while she was alive because she didn't like to look at it, because it was unnerving. And when you look at it, you'll understand why. Now, he's aware skeptics are like, okay, maybe his grandma just wanted to scare and tease him. But he's like, no, what I was told about the anguished man was the truth. Footage shared on his YouTube channel shows how a door suddenly slammed shut without human intervention, which was kind of the first red flag for Sean that maybe something was wrong. He's like, I've witnessed a lot. Noises are the first thing, and at first he didn't relate them to the painting. But it became obvious that they only started when the painting got brought into the house. Sean used to wake up in the middle of the night and see a figure at the end of his bed. He'd have dreams about the painting. Heck, he had a vivid one where he was being lifted off the bed, alien style. As well as alleging to have seen the figure of a man, just like his grandma used to claim she did, Sean says he heard crying, he heard moaning noises. Once he was even surrounded by thick smoke while the temperature plummeted. All signs of demonic activity. Sean said there was no denying it. It was there, and then it just vanished. And most of the activity seems to happen between 3 and 4 a.m. The witching hour. And finally for today, a husband and wife believe their Raggedy Ann doll is possessed after a series of terrifying events. So when Lindsay and Lee's doll first arrived in their museum of haunted objects, Lindsay and one of her close friends got a mysterious illness and narrowly avoided not 1, but 2 car crashes. Lindsay was like, yeah, I just got really ill, like I was in the hospital for a week, and the doctors to this day still don't know what was wrong. One of our good friends also became very ill, he got abscesses in his mouth, all sorts of things. So in the first car crash, a white van nearly went into the side of Lindsay's car and she had to go off the road. And in the other, she was on a roundabout. She was like almost pulling out and another car like almost crashed right into her. On the 2-year anniversary of the couple owning the doll, October 21st, they're like, yeah, the doll's causing chaos again. Their heavy Ouija table was hurled over, which was caught on camera. So after this, they decided to put the doll in a glass cupboard on a secure hook. They were like, maybe that'll stop everything. Well, Halloween 2022, 3 a.m., their camera footage showed it stepping out of the display cabinet, legs first, which like, rag dolls can't do that. They don't have like Barbie limbs. They normally just go head first, which, nope. And also a Ouija table? You're tempting fate.
In 2014, the movie Annabelle told the story of a haunted doll that was said to have been possessed by a malevolent spirit. However, the true story behind the Annabelle doll is far more fascinating. The Annabelle doll is a Raggedy Ann doll that was purchased by the mother of a nursing student named Donna in the 1970s and given to her as a Christmas gift. But hold on, she was apparently 28, so why was her mom giving her a doll at 28? Is that not weird already? Anyway, shortly after, Donna and her roommate began to experience strange occurrences, including unexplained noises, movements, and changes in temperature. The student and her roommate noticed the doll changing positions and leaving notes on the floor. It's reported that one of the paper notes had the word "help me" written on it in crayon. The doll also appeared in different rooms. A male friend actually woke up with the doll staring at him and felt like he was being and suffocated. He also allegedly noticed he had scratch marks all over his body. He was angry when retelling this nightmare that he allegedly then picked up the doll and chucked her raggedy body across the floor. Geez, scary and weird, right? Now, if you thought it was a dream, why are you so pressed though? It's alleged that one morning while the nurses were eating at their breakfast nook, Annabelle's 2 flimsy little cloth arms levitated onto the table. When the startling, paranormal activity took place, the nurses were oddly fascinated by the doll. One of the nurses deduced that the doll's actions meant she was trying to communicate with the roommates, so she called a psychic for advice. The medium took no time coming to the nurse's aid and quickly held a seance. While hosting the ritual, the psychic reported that she was, basically sensing the spirit of a young girl about 6 or 7 years old. The psychic went on to imply that the child was unalived outside of this apartment complex in a car accident. The psychic said her name is Annabelle and she's in that doll. That's how the name Annabelle came to be. The cursed doll Annabelle was first introduced to horror audiences in The Conjuring in 2013 and proved to be so compelling that the porcelain figure quickly became the subject of her own franchise, with Annabelle in 2014, Annabelle Creation 2017, and the latest, Gary Dauberman's Annabelle Comes Home. Now, The Hollywood Reporter actually spoke to Tony Spira, the real-life occult museum curator and son-in-law of renowned demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. Spira Chris says that the Annabelle doll is accurately portrayed in the films, at least according to the mythology of the museum. Now, the main difference between New Line's Annabelle and the Occult Museum's doll is just appearance. Lorraine Warren, who passed in 2019, said that looks are very deceiving. She said, "It's not what the doll looks like that makes it scary. It is what it has been infused within the doll, which is evil." In 2019, a team of paranormal investigators from the University of Edinburgh conducted a thorough analysis of the doll, including its history, composition, and alleged paranormal activity. Their findings revealed that the Annabelle doll is not in fact haunted, but rather its strange behavior can be attributed to a combination of psychological and environmental factors. The investigators concluded that Donna's experiences were likely the result of a combination of stress, anxiety, and the power of suggestion. As Dr. Caroline Watt, a paranormal investigator from the university, noted, the Annabelle doll is a fascinating example of how our perceptions can be influenced by our expectations and beliefs. Now, that's questionable to many people who do believe the doll is haunted. Today, the Annabelle doll remains safely housed behind a locked glass case in Ed and Lorraine Warren's Occult Museum. Next up, the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is one of the most famous diamonds in the world, with a history dating back to the 17th century. The diamond was actually discovered in India in 1673, and it was stolen during the French Revolution. The diamond was originally part of a Hindu statue's eye. The Hope Diamond, a stone as alluring as it is mysterious, is a major draw for all who go to see it. Its discovery brought about terrible fates, though, for seemingly everyone who came into contact with it, leading many to believe that the gem was cursed. And because of this, for centuries, it was believed to be so, with many of its owners meeting very tragic ends. The man who found the Hope Diamond, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, was said to be torn apart by wild dogs after stealing the diamond from the Hindu statue. Now, by 1908, the Washington Post was claiming that the Hope Diamond has brought trouble to all who have owned it, and followed up with several similar articles, heightening the bizarre and morbid stories attached to the precious jewel. Now, in 1911, the New York Times printed a very fascinating and completely unsubstantiated list of the fates of the stone's, previous owners, which makes it a very unsettling read. However, in 2010, a team of scientists from the Smithsonian Institution conducted an analysis of the diamond, including, the structure, the history, all of that jazz. Now, their findings revealed that the Hope Diamond is not cursed, but rather its owners have been victims of circumstance and bad luck. Questionable. I'm wondering how they concluded that. Like, how do you get proof that something isn't cursed, right? Anyway, the diamond's history is marked by a series of just unfortunate events, including thefts and betrayal, which have contributed to its reputation as a cursed object. As Dr. Jeffrey Post, curator of the Smithsonian's National Gem and Mineral Collection, noted, the Hope Diamond is a remarkable object, but its history is more a reflection of human nature than any supernatural force. The large diamond actually weighs about 45.52 carats. That is after undergoing a few cuts. Its original weight was marked at 112 carats. This weight is substantial, especially when you consider that this diamond isn't a traditional colorless diamond, but it has a deep blue color, though no one is actually certain of its exact location. The large diamond faced its first cut in 1168 when it was purchased by King Louis XIV of France and crafted into one of his crown jewels. It worked its way down through the family until Louis XV and his wife Marie Antoinette had it. When the couple were beheaded in the French Revolution and the royal treasure, pilfered, the Hope Diamond was lost, and its cursed reputation then took root. The general public can view the Hope Diamond in the Harry Winston Room in the Hall of Geology, Gems, and Minerals of the Natural History Museum of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. That was a mouthful, so if you're ever in Washington and want to catch a glimpse, go for it. Next, we have the Busby Stoop Chair. The Busby Stoop Chair is a notorious object that is said to be haunted by the ghost of Thomas Busby, an executioner who was crucified in 1702. According to legend, anyone who sits in the chair will be cursed with bad luck and eventually meet a very tragic end. After many generations of victims falling, to fatal accidents, the cursed chair would be sold to the Thirsk Museum, where it would ultimately become an attraction, suspended from the wall to the ceiling currently to prevent any visitors from sitting on it and activating its curse. However, in 2018, a team of scientists scientists from the University of Leeds conducted a thorough analysis of the chair, including, the structure, the history behind it, and all the kind of past curses that were said to be about it. Now, their findings did reveal that the chair is not in fact haunted, but rather its strange reputation can be attributed to a combination of folklore and psychological manipulation. The scientists concluded that the chair's supposed curse is likely the result of a combination of suggestion, expectation, the power of storytelling as well. But as Dr. Richard Wiseman, a psychologist from the University of Hertfordshire, noted, the Busby Stoop chair is a classic example of how our perceptions could be influenced by our beliefs and expectations. However, fans of course do beg to differ and still believe it's not only haunted, but really cursed. Next, we have the Dybbuk box. Now, the Dybbuk box is a notorious object that is said to be haunted by a malevolent spirit known as a Dybbuk. Now, according to legend, the box was originally owned by a survivor who used it to contain the evil spirit. Essentially, the box is claimed to contain a trapped Dybbuk, causing misfortune to anyone who opens it or comes in close proximity with it. The term Dybbuk actually comes from Jewish folklore, where it represents a wandering spirit that can possess a living person to achieve its goals. Now, people who have allegedly owned the Dybbuk box report experiencing various negative events like sudden illness, extreme bad luck, feelings of anxiety, and even physical manifestations. The Dybbuk box gained widespread notoriety due to, paranormal investigators like Zach Bagans featuring it on their shows, and it even inspired horror films like The Possession. Last on my list for today is Robert the Doll. Robert the Doll is a haunted doll that is on display at the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. The doll is said to be the most haunted doll in the world, so beating out our girl Annabelle. Now, some key points about the doll is that, a young girl gave a life-size doll to Robert Eugene, who went by Otto, in 1904. Otto named the doll Robert after himself, and Otto built a room in his attic for the doll with furniture and toys. Otto became attached to the doll and blamed it for his mishaps. Now, legend has it that the doll is cursed, and visitors who don't follow the doll's rules will be cursed as well. According to sources, some visitors have experienced sudden illness, injury, accidents, and even fatality after just visiting the doll. Visitors apparently write to Robert, often apologizing for not respecting him, out of fear of course, meeting a fateful end. Robert is now technically 117 years old, very old, and lives at the museum in a new display case, which was recently donated by someone who is a fan of Robert's. So if you find yourself in Key West, give it a visit and report back. The Chronovisor. Now, the Chronovisor is an alleged device that purportedly allows users to view past events. So essentially, a time machine of sorts. Now, according to some accounts, it was developed in the 1950s by Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk with assistance from scientists, including Nobel laureate Enrico Fermi. Now, Ernetti claimed to have used the Chronovisor to obtain a photograph of the crucifixion and to witness a performance of the lost play Thyestes in ancient Rome. Now, the claims surrounding the Chronovisor and Ernetti's work have been met with skepticism and controversy. Some evidence suggests the photograph of the crucifixion was a reversed image of a postcard, and doubts have been raised about the authenticity of his transcription of, the Thyestes. Now, the device supposedly used a series of antennas and exotic metals to capture residual electromagnetic radiation left by past events. While the Vatican has never confirmed its existence, rumors persist that the device is hidden within the Vatican's secret archives, deemed too dangerous due to its potential to alter, perceptions of history and challenge established doctrines, which would explain why even the Pope has refused to go near it. The Devil's Bible, which is the Codex Gigas. Now, the Codex Gigas, often referred to as the Devil's Bible, is a massive 13th century manuscript originating from Bohemia. Now, the Codex Gigas is the largest extant medieval illuminated manuscript in the world at a length of 92 centimeters. Its most striking feature is a full-page illustration of the devil, leading to legends that it was created in a single night through a pact with Satan. While the manuscript currently resides in the National Library of Sweden, some believe the Vatican possesses a copy, or related texts that are actually kept hidden due to their blasphemous content and the fear that reading them could invoke demonic influences. Researchers estimate that it would actually take one person 5 years, or around, the clockwork, to complete the Codex Gigas, meaning it's more likely that this one scribe spent between 10 to 25 years, or 3 hours a day, writing and illustrating the manuscript. In the internet age now, the Codex Gigas is now accessible online, allowing people from all around the world to explore its pages. Now, this newfound accessibility has its advantages, aiding researchers and history enthusiasts. Yet, it also raises questions about the risks of spreading its mysterious contents to a wider audience. It's been said that this is one item that the Pope won't touch, even with a pole. The Spear of Destiny, also known as the Holy Lance or the Spear of Longinus, is believed to be the weapon that pierced the side of Jesus during the crucifixion. Now, over the centuries, it has been associated with immense power, with legends claiming that whoever possesses it holds the fate of the world in their hands. Now, the spear is associated with immense power and just the ability to basically control world events for good or for evil. Throughout history, various figures like Emperor Constantine, Napoleon, and even far worse ones have been fascinated by the spear, seeking to possess it. Now, there are multiple claims to the original spear, with some relics housed in various locations like St. Peter's Basilica in Rome and the Hofburg Treasure House in Vienna. The spear has been a symbol of power, destiny, and religious belief, influencing historical events and shaping narratives. Now, due to its controversial history and the potential for misuse, it's rumored that the Vatican has secured the spear, with the Pope refraining from direct contact to avoid dire consequences associated with its legends. Third Secret of Fatima. Now, the Third Secret of Fatima, revealed in 2000 by the Vatican, describes a vision of persecution and the attack on a bishop dressed in white, interpreted as a prophecy of the 1981 assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1917. Now, 3 shepherd children in Fatima, Portugal, basically reported visions of the Virgin Mary, who entrusted them with 3 secrets. Now, while the first 2 were revealed early on, the third secret remained undisclosed until the year 2000. However, many believe that the full content of the third secret has never actually been entirely revealed, as it allegedly contains apocalyptic prophecies. Now, the Vatican, along with other interpretations, saw the secret as a warning about, the persecution of Christians and the dangers of war. Now, some interpretations also include the vision of hell, notes on the Fatima website. Now, the Vatican's reluctance to disclose the complete secret has led to a lot of speculation that its contents are so disturbing that even the Pope avoids direct engagement with the original documents. The True Cross relics. Now, relics of the True Cross, or pieces of the cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified, are venerated by many Christian, denominations as objects of devotion. Now, these relics are believed to have been discovered by Saint Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, during a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Saint Helena reportedly found not only the cross, but also the 3 nails used for the crucifixion. Saint Helena reportedly discovered and donated many other relics of the True Cross, including smaller pieces to the Basilica Santa Croce in Rome. Now, fragments believed to be from the True Cross, the cross upon which Jesus was crucified, are held in various churches worldwide. The Vatican possesses several of these relics. While they are, there are tales of certain fragments being associated with malicious or, basically just ominous events. Now, some stories suggest that specific pieces have been actually locked away due to unexplained occurrences, with the Pope choosing not to handle them directly, just to prevent potential supernatural repercussions. The Grand Grimoire. Now, the Grand Grimoire is a legendary book of black magic said to contain rituals for summoning demons and forging pacts with them. Now, the book describes several demons as well as the rituals to summon them in order to make a pact with them. Now, it also details several spells for winning a lottery, talking to spirits, being loved by a girl, making oneself invisible, etc., etc. While its existence remains unverified, some believe that a copy does reside within the Vatican's secret archives. Now, given its content, it's, purported that the Pope and other high-ranking officials avoid any interaction with the text, fearing the spiritual dangers that it poses. The Shroud of Turin. Now, the Shroud of Turin is a linen cloth bearing the image of a man, believed by many to be Jesus Christ, and is considered a significant religious relic by many people. Now, the cloth is actually housed in the Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista in Turin, Italy. Authenticity has been the subject of much debate, though, particularly after radiocarbon dating tests in 1988 indicated a date range of 1260 to 1390 CE. Which is much later than the traditionally accepted date of Jesus's, crucifixion. Now, the first recorded instance of the shroud was in 1354 in Liry, France. Now, it was presented to the church by a knight named Geoffrey de Charnay, who claimed it was Jesus's burial shroud. Now, in 1389, the Bishop of Troyes, Pierre de Arcis, denounced it was a forgery. Now, the shroud was later acquired by the House of Savoy and moved to Turin, Italy in 1578. It is now actually preserved in the Royal Chapel of the Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista in Turin. While it is, one of the most studied artifacts in human history, its authenticity does remain debated. The Vatican has been very cautious in its handling of the shroud, with popes, often observing it from a distance during public displays, possibly due to its controversial nature and the mysteries surrounding its origin. The Index Librorum Prohibitorium. Now, the Index of Forbidden Books was a list of publications deemed heretical or contrary to morality by the Catholic Church. The early versions of this index began to appear from 1529 to 1571. In the same time frame, in 1557, the English crown aimed to stem the flow of dissent by chartering the Stationers' Company. The right to print was restricted to 2 universities, Oxford and Cambridge, and to the 21 existing printers in the city of London, which had between them maybe 53 printing presses. Now, while the index was officially abolished in 1966, copies and related documents are preserved in the Vatican archives. Some of these texts are considered very dangerous and that they remain under strict lock and key, with the Pope even abstaining from reading them to avoid exposure to potentially corrupting ideas. The Papal Tiara of Lucifer. Now, the phrase Papal Tiara of Lucifer is a symbolic association, not a historical fact. It highlights the association of Lucifer, Satan, with the Papal Tiara, a symbol of the Catholic Church's head of state, the Pope. Now, this phrase suggests a connection between worldly power and religious authority, with the figure of the devil often seen as a symbol of evil and rebellion against God. A legend speaks of a Papal Tiara that was crafted but never actually worn, known as the Tiara of Lucifer. It's said to have been commissioned during a tumultuous period in church history and imbued with symbols considered blasphemous. Now, due to its controversial nature, the tiara was hidden away, with successive popes refusing to even acknowledge its existence, let alone wear it. The vial containing the dried blood of Saint Generis, which liquefies miraculously on certain occasions, is kept in Naples, but the Vatican has its own blood relics with similar phenomena. Now, some of these relics have exhibited unpredictable behavior, leading to concerns about their origins and the forces at play. Due to these uncertainties, the Pope often refrains from direct interaction with such relics.